Hey everyone, welcome to GameFace, episode 239 on Sifted Games at Sifted.net. I'm Shane Satterfield, the founder of Sifted, and we're here every Wednesday on Twitch, live streaming the best 3 hours of video game coverage you're going to find anywhere. Although this episode is not streaming live on Twitch. Our TriCaster TD had another gig that took him out of town. So we're going to have to...
I thought you were going to say this epised is not very good.
No, I would never say that, Kyle. Every
that's
episode
not
of
like him.
GameFace is freaking amazing. What are you talking about? But anyway, Jared is on another gig out of town, so we had to record this one offline. We did get questions from you guys through our forums and through Twitter for Q&A at the end, so we'll definitely do that. But Matt, overall, a really slow week in the games industry.
Yeah, the world kind of holding its breath before Cyberpunk.
Me too.
So
Let's be honest, I'm really excited for that game. So yeah, it's like kind of the calm before the storm. We do have one huge game to talk about today, Ubisoft's latest open world game I've been playing for the last 5-6 days or so, Immortals, Fenyx Rising. So we'll definitely talk about that. A couple other things before we get started, and I will say this show's probably going to be shorter than most shows, and we have a lot of topics, but nothing gigantic. So it's going to be like one of those episodes that's just like machine gun fire of topics, so it should be fun. Before we get started, if you're listening to this show anywhere out on the wilds of the internet, you're on iHeartRadio, you're on Spotify, you're on Apple Podcasts, you're on Google Podcasts, and you want to support us, head to patreon.com/sifted. That's SIFTD. Sifted without the E. Everything we do is supported 100% by our patrons at Patreon. And if you enjoy the show and you want to see it continue, please head on over there and kick us $1 a month, $100 a month, whatever you can afford. I know times are tough right now. And if you can't afford any money at all, you can always help us with Twitch Prime. If you're on YouTube, there are instructions for that in the description. We appreciate anything you guys do. Even if you just share the show on social media, we appreciate it very much. So with that, we'll get on with the show. Matt, like we said, it has been a very slow week in the games industry. We're only like 2 weeks out from Generation 9 console launch. Is this typical for it to be this slow so soon after a big event?
I would say yeah. Like
it's the calm after the storm.
Yeah, the constant doldrums after that first launch line because no one else has anything ready for a while. I mean, we're lucky we're even getting Immortals and Cyberpunk when we are.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Yeah, they barely squeaked in under the wire. Any game that comes out in December typically had some kind of a funky thing going on with this development. Mm-hmm. Very rarely are games planned for release in December.
Yeah. In fact, I'm currently playing one of the most infamous examples of that, which is Knights of the Old Republic 2.
Oh. Yeah.
On Series X, because the KOTOR games actually look real good on Series X. Like, the auto HDR makes them look pretty damn okay.
Wow, that's good news.
And, of course, one of the big problems with the old KOTORs was how long you had to sit there watching them load, and that's not a problem anymore. So, like, the load time's almost instant now. So, it's actually a better experience. But, obviously, KOTOR 2 was supposed to come out, I think, like August or September 2005, and suddenly LucasArts bumped the release date up 9 months to December 2004. So Obsidian had to ship an unfinished game, and that's why The Last Planet makes no sense whatsoever. It's just a series of random images like that kind of don't gel together. But that's another. It came out in December in time for Christmas, and that's another famous December release that, like you said, December is usually where the problem goes.
Yep, usually something that got delayed that wasn't supposed to be delayed, but they have to get it out before the holiday season is over. That's typically where they fall. I think maybe Smash was a December release intentionally, if I remember correctly, the last one. I don't think it was like delayed to December. I think all along Nintendo had planned December. Yeah,
sometimes December releases are like, we want it in time for Christmas, but we don't want to fight the November release battle.
Yep.
Especially once Call of Duty became a thing. Like, there's always that feeling of like you want to get away from the Call of Duty area.
Window. Yeah.
There's that window that's like basically like Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed just owned it for like 10 years in that little like October-November window, and you just didn't want to be involved.
Yep.
So.
Well, the big news that's coming from November is that according to Sony, the PlayStation 5 outsold the PlayStation 4 at launch quite handily. Sony has not provided numbers, but the thing is, the PlayStation 4 was the best console launch ever. So if the PlayStation 5 has dwarfed the sales of PS4, then by proxy, PlayStation 5 is the best-selling launch console of all time. Matt, does it feel like it was the best-selling launch console of all time?
Well, I'll tell you, I am trying to keep an eye out for more orders and pre-orders, or whatever you want to call them, for a couple of friends who didn't get it at launch. And yes, it does still feel like that because it's so hard to get. I mean, we said it back in, I think, March or April. They're going to sell as many of these as they can make.
Yeah.
And that is proving very true.
Yeah, we actually have a topic later on where we're going to readdress console pre-orders and all the stuff that a lot of you guys are going through trying to get them. But to me, it's usually when I think about console launches, and maybe this is the evidence that it is true, usually after console launches, I have other people that I know that have the console. But I don't know anyone that has a PlayStation 5 at all.
I know several people.
I mean, other than you.
You know several people. They just aren't talking to you about it, I guess.
Yeah.
Benson got one, and
okay.
I know 5 other people with one, at least in my immediate friend circle.
Okay.
I know like double that are asking me about them. So it's there. It's just, you know, I think more people would have them if they were available.
Oh,
and
sure.
like, I had a couple people that's like, oh, I can't believe it's sold out. Like, it surprises me that it's still sold out. I'm just like, the gardener could have told us that was going to happen. You know, we knew that. And I said, you know, I've said, like we've said, like on the show last week or the week before, like, you're not going to be able to just walk into a store and find this thing on a shelf until like April at the earliest. Like, it's going to be the hot thing all through Christmas. And then there's going to be the post-Christmas, I didn't get one and I'm trying to get one now, slow burn as they get more shipped out that I think will last the whole first quarter. And that's just how it's going to go.
Yeah, the new episode of Pactor Factor is about that specifically. When will people be able to just walk into a store and pick up a PS5 or an Xbox Series X? I'm not going to spoil what he says. Obviously, I think Microsoft was who first floated the April date when they said that's probably when they expected supply to catch up with demand. So we'll see. But to me, like, comparing the PS4 launch to the PS5 launch, which one do you think feels bigger?
I mean, in terms of people kind of chattering about it, I'd say PS5 does, because there wasn't a whole lot to talk about with the PS4.
Yeah.
Like, everybody's talking about Demon's Souls and Spider-Man and Miles Morales, and to some degree the Astrobot haptic feedback stuff. And with PS4, it was just like, Resogun's cool, and Shadowfall sure sucked, and that's about it. I mean, there wasn't... Yeah. You know, and that was not that the Xbox One was much better, but like, it was just there was a really anemic launch lineup on the last gen things, and there was just didn't feel like there was a lot of hype around, you know, what people were doing and playing after they got their systems last time. And this time, at least for the PS5, it feels like that's pretty strong, just because Miles Morales is so good and Demon's Souls is, you know, if anyone who's not interested in Miles Morales is probably interested in Demon's Souls. So it feels like people are at least like vocally enjoying the new system more than they were before.
Now, when I said
because
earlier,
of good stuff to play.
Yeah. When I said earlier that I didn't know anyone who had one, I didn't mean like industry folks. Like, that's a given. Everybody in the industry needs one for the most part. I'm talking about my friends who are gamers, like back in Philadelphia. And they are gamers. Like, they will buy, at least a couple of them usually buy one of the consoles at launch. And none of my circle of friends, my casual gaming friends, have a PS5. And none of them have even, like, this is the weird part, none of them have even reached out to me about it. And I don't know if that is a factor of how readily available information is now, and they don't need someone like me to, like, get the skinny on stuff. I don't know. But they haven't asked me about either of the next-gen consoles, and usually I'm getting, like, bombarded with text messages whenever.
Yeah, I don't know. Some of that might be that they're not ready to buy it yet because they are expensive. The thing I've noticed is like several of the people I know who have one are more casual people who basically got lucky with either in-store deals or like went to bestbuy.com when they saw the commercial and was like, oh, there's one available, you know?
Lucky, yeah.
And that can happen if someone cancels a pre-order or changes something. Like it's not an exact analog, but like there was an exclusive Transformer at Target that was sold out instantly as soon as it went up for pre-order. And then like a few weeks ago, I was like, I'm going to go look and see just to see. Sometimes they have more or whatever. And I pulled it up and it was available for pre-order. So I pre-ordered it and then it was sold out again. And I was gonna be like, hey, to the other people I know who are looking for it, like, hey, like this thing's available. You should go jump on it right now. And it was just gone. And someone else was like, oh, I looked at that this morning and where there weren't any. And someone was like, what probably happened there is somebody canceled their pre-order. You saw it right as that happened. It freed one up.
Right in there. And
I pre-ordered the one that was available. And then I did it again with another one that's exclusive to Walmart. And in my cart, it literally told me only one left. Like, check out now. And I was like, oh, okay. So that can happen. Like, you can get lucky that way. Usually I get lucky with a $10 Transformer, not like a $500 game console, obviously. But that can happen. So a couple of them do have it. One of them's playing Demon Souls, has never played a Souls game before in his life, and it's just like, this is amazing. And I was like, and the funny thing is, he's just like, because I told him about it a while ago, and he basically had been like, that sounds good, but I can't play something without a pause button when I have two children.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And now the kids are old enough that they'll leave him alone to play stuff, and he's like, this is amazing.
He's in.
So it's happening. And then I got other like more casual people that are sort of like, oh, I didn't realize this was like going to be such a hot item. And I'm just like, like there's a lot of people that didn't realize that it was going to be hard to get.
Yeah,
so
my
there's some of
landlord
that.
was in my apartment this week. He was helping me like hang my new TV, which is finally on the wall. I'm very excited about it. It's been like a 2 or 3 week process, but it's all done finally. All buttoned up, new entertainment center, living room finished. But he was up there. I had no one to help me because it's COVID. But he lives in the building, and I see him all the time. So he came up, and we hung the TV, and he saw my PlayStation 5 sitting there, and he was like, what is that? And he's like 70. I was like, it's the PlayStation 5. It just came out. And he's like, it plays video games? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, that thing's pretty. It's like, okay.
Found your audience, Sony. Well, there you go.
I was like, okay, if you feel that way. I didn't say that I didn't agree with him, but I was like, oh.
I mean, it kind of does look like it has an element of like kind of what the future looks like to someone from the 50s, I guess.
It looks like the Jetsons a little bit. Absolutely. Yeah. Matt, what to you feels like the biggest console launch ever?
I mean, either this one or the Dreamcast, I guess.
Me, it's the Dreamcast, and it's
but
really
the Dreamcast wasn't because it was a failure. Like this, it clearly wasn't the biggest launch of all time.
I was pointing maybe at myself, saying this doesn't feel like the biggest console launch ever. But then I think to myself, I thought the biggest one was Dreamcast, and it was minuscule. So maybe it's just hard to gauge these things, particularly now when everybody is buying stuff online. And one of the major players doesn't give sales numbers anymore in Microsoft. So, we have to extrapolate stuff from data that we get from Sony and Microsoft and whatever little hints that Pachter gives us about MPDs here and there, which he really rarely does anymore. But
I mean, all the same. Although, can we finally stop with the bullshit about consoles are going away, no one wants hardware anymore? No. Yeah. Everyone wants hardware. Consoles are going nowhere. Consoles will be here for 2-3 more generations minimum, and people will buy there probably will be a PlayStation 9. People the consoles aren't ending.
He did hedge his bet. Pachter did hedge his bet a little bit in a recent episode. He said that basically every generation they're going to drop by 35% until there's none. And he's like, and I don't know how many generations that is or whatever. He did sort of change his stance a little bit.
Okay, well, I'll bet you this. The PlayStation 5 will sell at least 35% more units than the PS4.
And I just gave you a sneak peek at a future episode of Pachter Factor that has not been published yet.
Pachter needs to stop trying to make fetch happen on that subject. It's not going to happen.
Well, he has no incentive to make it happen. He legitimately believes it. It's not that there's any agenda or he's got some action.
Well, I'm sure he'd like to be right.
Yeah.
But I just don't see. I mean, I'm sure in the kind of pie in the sky, this would be good for the corporation biz dev circles he runs in. That's a thing that people keep talking about and like dream about, but like not necessarily him, because that doesn't benefit him at all. He's an observer in that regard, but I'm sure like he's around people that talk about that as a positive all the time. The consumers don't see it like that, and they never will.
I don't know that they see it.
They probably don't see it. Yeah, because it's just nonsense right now.
Obscure, yeah.
And at what point also it's like, oh, you're going to buy a console that's the console hardware will just be built into the TV. How many TVs do you think we're buying out here? Like you even just said that TV you just bought's going to be there for 10 years, maybe longer than you're alive. Like you buy another TV every 5 years when Sony decides it's time for a new PlayStation generation? No. Like, and it locks you into probably a Sony TV. Who the fuck wants a Sony TV at this point? Like it's like it's not
way overpaying.
There is absolutely no benefit to the consumer for doing that way. It's ridiculous. The entire idea is nonsense. Yeah. Like I'm sure there's people in biz dev thinking and talking about it and being like, "Ooh, wouldn't this be cool to lock people into?" No, it's not. It doesn't. It's like as Woody Allen said, it's like philosophy with Socrates. It's functional on paper, but it's not very useful once you get into the real world. Yeah. So I don't think that's ever happening. I think the sales of the PS5 and the Switch continue to prove that there is plenty of hunger for hardware, and that's not going away anytime soon.
Did you see in the UK last week, Switch outsold Xbox Series X?
That's not shocking to me. I
was kind of surprised. I mean, part of that could be that Microsoft just doesn't have the inventory.
It's part inventory, price.
It's not the headline you want.
But no, you don't.
Into your console launch.
You probably don't want the 3-year-old last gen system
that can barely play 1080p games to crush your hyper powerful super console. But it just shows you. It's all about the games, man. It's really not about the hardware.
Also, at this point, you can't really argue with the Switch's library. So
it's great. I can imagine being like a new purchaser of Switch right now. You have so many great games to play, and they're huge.
Yeah, well, and also games you can only play on the Switch. Like if you look at those, if you're looking at weighing those two systems, even if you're ignoring the price, which you shouldn't be, but like if you're ignoring the price. You look at all these games on the Switch, you can only play on the Switch, and all these games on the Xbox, you can also play on your PS5 or your PC. The Switch is a pretty easy choice there, isn't it?
Yep. So, I mean, the early returns, based upon the anecdotal evidence that we have, is PlayStation 5 appears to be blazing a path to victory already. There's a long way to go, obviously. We're only 2 weeks into this, and this is a 7-year marathon, not a 1-year sprint.
But I also feel like right as the PS5 right as the sales of the new systems are going to start to slow down in the retail space, Ratchet's going to come out. And it's just going to start all over again.
And Gran Turismo, and then
Ratchet's going to people are going to see Ratchet and lose their minds all over again. I think it's because that thing.
Yeah.
Also, what's that?
Microsoft to get Halo out before Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart.
Well, that's not going to happen. But
we'll see.
No way. And what's the other one? Is it Kena and the Bridge of Spirits? Yeah. Is that that one? I think could make a splash if it's any good. Like the visuals on that are striking.
They are.
So we'll see.
Which bodes well for indie games in Generation 9. If that's what they're going to look like, yahoo.
So if you want it to look like that, you can make it look like that, especially on the new stuff. So
it's not as much work as it used to take, for sure. Yep.
But like that thing looks really good. That's a first impression that you can't buy that, frankly. So like people see that thing and go, oh my God, what is that? And it's like, as long as it delivers, I think you might have a breakout hit on your hand with that thing.
Yep.
So we'll see. And Microsoft, there's nothing like that in the pipeline in a comparable time frame.
So there you go. PlayStation 5, biggest console launch ever in the United States. Definitely not in Japan. Japan's numbers have been tepid for every console launch for the last decade. So we don't really look to that territory anymore as a barometer. But things in the U.S. are looking real good for PlayStation 5. You should buy it with confidence if you can find one. So yesterday, was Marcus Beer's 50th birthday, Matt. And his wife had contacted me on Facebook, and she's like, well, obviously we can't do an in-person party, but we're going to do like a Zoom call. And so it was scheduled for like yesterday early evening, and I jumped on and got to talk with Marcus and hang out with him. Quick update for everyone. He's doing great. He also just launched his own consulting company. He is not with that old consulting company anymore. His new company is called From Alpha, and he's working with developers to make games better. So he's still helping you guys behind the scenes. But the reason I bring this up is because on the Zoom call was someone from Turn 10 Studios. If you guys don't know who that is or what that is the studio that creates Forza Horizon, and Forza Motorsport. And just this week, it leaked out that Forza Horizon 4 may actually be coming before the next Forza Motorsport. And 5. And in the case of full disclosure, I did try to get information out of him. I was like, so we're hearing that Horizon's coming before Motorsport, and he just did the whole zip the mouth thing. Take that for what you will. I mean, typically, if I say something like that to a developer, they'll say, no, more Motorsport's coming first. He didn't say that. So, again, take that for what it's worth. Matt, do you think that this would be, if this is the case, and I will say this information came from VentureBeat's Jeff Grubb, who has kind of become like the new investigative reporter in the games industry that works at a free publication. He gets scoops on stuff, and you don't have to go through a paywall to get to them. But anyway, he's a reliable source, and he says, and he's also a reliable source for Xbox stuff, I would add. And he says that Forza Horizon is going to come before Motorsport. And Matt, do you think that this is a strategic thing where Microsoft is saying, you know what? The Horizon franchise reviews better and sells better than Motorsport. Maybe we need to step on the gas for that, and we can pump the brakes a little bit on Motorsport. Or do you think it's just the natural sequence of development?
I think it's just the natural sequence. Like, I think Forza Motorsport, because they see it as sort of the big monolithic sim, sort of the flagship of the brand name. I think they're going to try to like reinvent that, really take advantage of the new tech, like make it something special. Not that Horizon isn't special, because I love Horizon. I like Horizon better than the main series.
Me too. By several magnitudes. Yeah.
But I think Horizon 5 is not going to require you to reinvent the wheel in the same way. And Playground Games has this sort of on a lockdown. You know, Playground Games is the lead developer on the Horizon stuff, with assists from Turn 10, and they seem to kind of have this series on lockdown right now. Like, they know exactly what they're doing, they know exactly how it works, they know exactly how to make it. And a Horizon that just plays better and looks better, right? Like, that's all you need to do. All you need to do is find a new setting, do it again, and you're golden. Like, you don't need to mess with that franchise at all, really. I
mean, at this point, you would assume Turn 10 is backed off. Like, I'm sure when they made the first couple games of Playground, they were all over them and like really like managing the granular parts of the game, but the Playground has proven that it can handle it all on its own. So maybe it's a case where Turn 10 is just like hands off now, and you're right, Playground has just continued on. It has its next game ready, and Turn 10 doesn't.
I mean, I think that's probably what's happening. I just think Forza Motorsport, what would it be? 8?
8 is what. But I think they're rebooting it.
They're going to just call it Forza Motorsport. Yeah. Forza Motorsport X.
It could be.
Yeah. I think there's just like, I think they're trying to Gran Turismo it, and that stuff takes time. They're probably trying to revamp the driving model and the damage model and add more, all this and whereas, Horizon 5 is going to be like, it's in a new place, go smash some boards, wait for the Lego expansion, call it a day,
but the
which is great.
Of Horizon to me does seem more intricate than Motorsport.
I don't know, not at all.
Really?
Not at all.
How come?
No.
Why do you believe that?
Because they're just building on the framework of what came before, whereas I think Forza Motorsport, they reinvent the tech every gen.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I'm talking more about like the designing of the game, because
you got to build the tech before you can design Motorsport.
You already know what all the tracks are. You already scanned the tracks like 20 years ago. You've scanned all the cars. Like, it just seems like more creativity is involved in Horizon, whereas just more grunt work is involved with Motorsport.
I don't think that's true when you're jumping to generations and basically rebuilding the tech. I think that's the long time consuming part, is always building the skeleton of the tech that you need to build the thing on top of.
Why would Playground not be doing that as well?
Because Horizon doesn't need it. Like, you're not doing that. And Horizon 6 might use some of it, like taking it from Motorsport 8. But like, I think Horizon 5 is just going to be Horizon 4 prettier. You know what I mean?
Personally, I just think it makes more sense to release Horizon first.
Horizon is
for Motorsport whatsoever.
Horizon is going to make more of a splash in the press and be, like more exciting to look at anyway. But I 100% do not believe it's a strategic move. I think it's just what's going to be done.
No, I agree with you. I tend to agree. But I think that
I certainly would prefer to get Horizon 5 first.
Yeah,
I don't care about Motorsport 8.
It's going to be better for Microsoft that game comes out before.
Yeah, it's not a downside at all. Like that's good news as far as I'm concerned.
No,
like
absolutely. The earlier we get that game, the better. It's my driving game of the generation. So I am more than excited. I just never dreamed we'd see it for another 2 years at least. Although 4
it's getting to be the right time.
Yeah, I guess it has been almost 2 years since 4 came out.
Yeah, they put the Horizons out on a very strict two-year schedule so far.
I'm sure they were developing all along with Series X in mind. They had that internal information, that documentation. They knew how to write to the metal while they were working on this game. So
and they knew what it was going to be, and it's going to run on the old systems as well. So it's all it's all kind of in place. Like it's just cranking the settings up to ultra, really. And it's it'll be the advantage. Play Forza Horizon 4 on the new system, and it's just like load time, no all this. It's great.
It was made for the system already.
Yeah.
It looks that flipping good. Do you get excited for Motorsport anymore? I do not. I really
the regular one. No,
yeah, I honestly don't even care if it just stopped coming out. I hate to say it because Turn 10's great at what it does, and they're very skilled as far as driving game developers. Driving sims, I've played so many through the years, and look, I know there are always young gamers who are now 13, who are now 17, who are now 21. They need games, but for me personally, I've really burned out on driving sims at this point. I don't really care all that much about Gran Turismo either. It's not that I'm picking one over the other. The rigidity of these games I've never really enjoyed them all that much, and now I've just got to the point where if I can avoid playing them, I will.
Yeah, I mean, I would never really notice if another Forza Motorsport didn't come out. I do think that they need to exist because there's people that prefer that. Everybody should have their preferred driving game of choice, and there's people that prefer the Gran Turismo Motorsport angle. I certainly prefer Forza Motorsport to Gran Turismo. I think Forza tends to capture the joy of driving and the joy of loving cars and automotive stuff better. They just seem to have a better handle on what it means to love driving.
Because I think Polyphony would cry if they heard you say that. Because they focus so hard on that stuff.
They'd focus on the realism, but they don't really have any personality. They don't Gran Turismo has never struck me as anything other than sterile for the most part.
But I think Motorsport's the same way.
Motorsport is pretty sterile in terms if you compare it to something like Horizon or Need for Speed. But like when they put in the Top Gear guys to do it had that, even before that they had that feeling of they try to make this is your garage and your they made it kind of more about you.
More of a cultural angle to it than there is in.
They captured the cult, the culture or the cult, some would say, of loving cars and being into just that kind of touring thing. Not just people that race cars, but people that love cars and like to get in I got to drive this car and drive it down the 280 and see what that was like. Yeah, just people who love all the weirdness and all the differentiations and all the design quirks of cars and car history and all that. And Gran Turismo has a lot of that too. It's so when I think of Gran Turismo, I think of a giant white space.
Yeah, it's just just empty vessel
nothing
of assets.
Whereas Forza, and part of this is because of the Forza Vision thing they've had for several installments. With Forza, I think of the feeling of when I go shopping for a new car and I walk around the car in the showroom and smell it and think about it. Forza captures that in a way that Gran Turismo never has.
I think they do.
That's why I like it. They definitely do, and I mean they did it first. They did them first before Gran Turismo, because Gran Turismo always that thing there's no way we could do it to the degree that we need it to be happy with it. And Forza's just watch us, motherfucker. They've done a great job with the in-cockpit driving, which goes back to early 360, which they pulled that off, and even they really did a good job on all that. And but the thing is, like you said, you can only change. The novelty of that only lasts so long, and I feel like it ran out of steam in 6 for me, and 7 was just more of the same. And I'll keep an open mind, but the idea that 8 would have anything really new to show me besides shinier door panels is a little hard for me to swallow. I'm sure it's great, and like the rubber on the tires is going to deform properly depending on where you steer and what bumps you hit. But does that make me any more interested to drive Le Mans again? Not really, you know. Whereas Forza Horizon 5, who knows where this thing's going to be set? Who knows what I'm going to be doing? Who knows what crazy shit the DLC packs are going to be? Like, you know, like Forza Horizon is just, you know, it's more arcadey and it's not like this, but it still captures that love of cars and that love of bonding with other people who love cars.
It doesn't feel like real driving.
No, and you can set it to be much more simmy if you want to be, and it's there for kind of there for everyone, and it puts you in an interesting situation. It gives you a world to play in. It gives you consequences and sort of a much stronger feeling of like kind of in-world progression. Like it just speaks to me as a video game person more than a car person, and I think that Forza Horizon strikes that balance better than Motorsport does. And like I'm certainly not trying to hate on Motorsport. Like if you prefer Motorsport to Horizon, like I get it, and like I'm sorry you're gonna have to live through like the release of Forza for short attention span babies before you get your real Forza game. But I'm pretty happy to get Horizon 5 first.
Now, Matt, do you think either of those games move the needle? Just being honest and frank.
I think Horizon might, but not to the degree that like a bigger, more univeal, because like the problem.
Anybody to buy an Xbox instead?
Probably not. It could help push you over the edge if you're like almost there, I think. But like the thing about driving games is like it doesn't pull a lot of new people in. Like it's you either like a racing game or you don't, and it's not like you're not going to get someone who's like, I don't like racing games, but I'll try this one for some reason. He's like it doesn't cross boundaries. You know what I mean? Like it's just if you're into it, you're into it, and if you are into it, you're probably planning to get an Xbox anyway because you know Forza's coming.
Yep. Yeah. So there you go. The Forza line, I guess we could call it, for Xbox. It looks like both games will probably be out before the end of next year. That's a rarity that we get.
Maybe.
Do you think that they may delay Motorsport?
I think Motorsport will slip to 2022.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think that's smart. Like, I think it would be silly to release both of those franchises in the same year.
Yeah, I think it's weird.
They're so desperate for content, Matt. They may.
Yeah, I also think it's weird. I always think it's weird that there's no Horizon equivalent on PlayStation.
Yeah. Where's their semi-arcade excellent racer? They don't have a studio to do it. They had one. They had the studio that did Motorstorm.
They had a couple.
But
they had Motorstorm. I think the Drive Club guys could have pulled it off if you let them do it. Yeah. But they really gutted their driving stable for reasons.
Games don't sell all that well.
Yeah,
anymore.
but like I think you could do something. Like Drive Club had potential if you leaned on it, but like most people don't even know that game existed. Had some of the best rain effects I've ever seen in a driving game.
5 false starts or whatever. There's so much controversy around it and everything. Everyone just wrote it off, I think.
Yeah, I just think it's a shame they didn't give that team a chance to sort of do it again. Not necessarily Drive Club 2 or anything, but like they had talent. They could put a driving game together in less time than Polyphony could manage, and it feels like if you kind of made them the more accessible, maybe Need for Speed style driving team, you could have had something there, but Sony wasn't interested in it, so there we go. Because maybe that's what Sony figures. They've got all the, if anything from like EA or whoever decides to make an arcade racing game is going to end up on PlayStation anyway, so that's what they'll lean on. And since those games don't really move the needle, like you say, it's just not worth having your own internal team for it.
Yeah. I mean, it's smart, honestly. Those games just don't sell very well anymore.
It's not like Sony isn't already killing it with the first party stuff. You know, they don't need to.
There aren't plenty of third parties that are making driving games for its console. It's probably happy to just take its 10% from those games and dump a ton of money and take the risk on its own.
Yeah, I just wish those games were better.
I agree. Okay, let's move on. We're going to talk next about PlayStation VR 2. Recently, Sony came out and said we're not going to hear anything about PlayStation VR 2 this year. And I think we kind of assumed that. You want to give a little bit of room for the PlayStation 5 to breathe. It just launched after all. But information has been trickling in about PSVR 2 for a while. And we've talked about a couple things here on GameFace in the past. But probably the biggest one that was announced this week is that Sony filed a patent for a VR headset that includes haptic feedback, which is a big catchphrase over the last couple of weeks because of the DualSense PlayStation 5 controller includes it, and it's like mind-blowing. So it appears that this technology is something that Sony is looking to bring over into its VR headset, its next VR headset. So, Matt, I have a couple questions here. The first one is, do you want haptic feedback in a VR helmet? And I'll let you go ahead and answer that one.
Well, I mean, that kind of depends what they're talking about. Like, they mean like it's going to have like kind of, specialized controllers that involve that. Like, cool. If you're going to poke me in the face with something, like,
no,
not
it's like
really
in the helmet that's putting like.
Oh, so it would be like kind of it'd be like a gyro thing, like where if I need to turn my head, it might like in Ace Combat, when I turn some way, it might be harder for me to turn my head the opposite direction
I don't know
of the
how
G-forces.
They would do that, but.
I mean, you can do that. You can do that with just the same way they do stuff with like a lot of Rumble stuff is done with gyros. Like, you can actually do that, like the way the old force feedback joysticks worked. Like that's sort of how
gyro inside.
It would basically like add a little bit of weight, a kind of a little bit of resistance to turning your head. Like, you'd feel
science.
You kind of feel like you have to physically turn, like the headset was pushing against you a little bit. That could be interesting in terms
that in a VR helmet.
I mean, yeah, in terms of like that, or like a driving game where you're trying to look around and it's like kind of resisting you based on the motion of the car. Like, that's actually a really cool idea. Or I know there's people that, I don't know if there's any way that they've actually worked on or gotten anywhere with it, but like, I know there were people working on, or at least people that my friend knew that were working on an idea similar to that. It's like a haptic feedback thing for the headsets that makes you somehow feel the acceleration of things. Like it somehow like kind of pushes like in the same way it
pulls your face back.
No, in the same way that like it resists your like turning, it would kind of make you feel like it's pushing back on your head.
Oh, wow!
It kind of feel like your head's being pulled back from like
on the back, and
like you're kind of being pulled back by acceleration. Like, that would be the idea.
Interesting. Huh.
And the same thing when you stop, like that. That's one of the things they're working on. I don't know what kind of tech that would require, how heavy that headset would need to be. That would be. I mean it does seem to. It does seem to track with like with Sony's sort of MO for things this gen though. So who knows?
My bigger question really, and I would not be a fan of haptic feedback. I love it in the DualSense. Having things like pushing in on my head, I think that's where I draw the line. There's a fine line between realism and absurdity, and to me, that's where it starts to step over the line of absurdity. The bigger question for me really at this point, Matt, is you look at Oculus. I mean, with all due respect to HTC, to me, Oculus is the premier VR company. Facebook, ultimately, is what it is. But you look at what Facebook is doing with Oculus, and they're discontinuing the Rift S and all their VR HMDs that work with outside hardware. The only thing you're going to be able to buy is the Quest going forward. And obviously, the Quest 2 just came out. It's like $400. It seems to be selling really well. So my question is, why would Sony create VR that is reliant on hardware? Do you think that they will? Do you think you're going to need a PlayStation 5 to play PlayStation VR 2?
Yes, absolutely. No question.
Why would Sony sort of go backwards?
Because they're not going backwards. They're going forwards in a different direction.
Okay.
And the reason for that is that the PlayStation VR is made by the PlayStation division, and they're never going to want to divorce it from the PlayStation. Whether that's a mistake or not, I don't know. But they are going to kind of try to do more of the HTC style boutique high quality experience, whereas the Oculus is more of a quick and dirty.
Oculus mass consumer.
Yeah, it's mass consumer. Well, their aim is mass consumer, but what it really is, when you get down to it, it's an inferior experience because the hardware is underpowered, et cetera, et cetera. And Sony, which is funny because the PlayStation VR was that before. Yeah. Like the current PlayStation VR is definitely the grainiest, lowest resolution,
entry level VR HMD.
Yeah. Certainly when all that stuff launched, Sony was the cheapest. Sony had the worst screen door effect. Sony had the lowest resolution, like screens in the goggles.
The worst problems with motion sickness.
Worst problems with motion stuff. Lowest resolution motion stuff, like in terms of like samples per second. Couldn't do room scale, all that kind of stuff. I think they are going for broke in the other direction on PSVR, and they're trying to tie it into sort of the haptic thing and sort of the general PlayStation experience. I'm sure that headset will look just as weird as the console does, with the flowing white lines and everything.
That would be crazy.
That kind of thing. So I think they are going to try to lean harder into like you get the HD experience, the HDR, whatever. Wouldn't surprise me to see like them leaning into that. I think you're going to run into the issue of cost pretty quickly with that, but it seems like maybe they don't care. And if the system can sell for 500, maybe the headset can sell for 300. Like, who knows? Like, I don't think
PlayStation VR, you couldn't get that for $300. So
I don't think Sony is particularly concerned about mass adoption for this thing, really.
Well, I mean, if you look at it, PlayStation VR, I think the last public numbers that Sony provided was like 2 million sold or something like that. And it's willing to do another one. So that speaks to what you just said, in that it's not concerned about selling like 1 to every 2 PlayStation 5s or whatever.
Yeah. But even if you sell like 1 to every 5 or 1 to every 4, the number of PlayStation 5s that are being sold, like just by a game of numbers, you're going to get a pretty good number of adopters.
Yeah, I don't think they'll ever hit that, though, is my point. I think they're going to hit 1 out of every, like, 500.
Well, it depends. It's going to seriously depend on what's on this thing. You know, everyone's still looking for the killer app for VR, and, like, every once in a while something pops up that everyone thinks it is. You know, Beat Saber.
Do you think with it being tethered, though, the perception will be that it's not cutting edge? Even though it will be. It will probably be the best VR HMD on the market when it's released. Do you think perception, though, will be like, oh, that's old. It has like a cord and you're like attached? And
I don't think so, because most people don't even have much of a perception of VR stuff yet. It's not. The other thing that I wonder is, Sony's pretty on target with a lot of their, R&D on a lot of this stuff. It's not impossible that this thing would have like 2 modes, like a wireless mode that like kind of lowers everything down a little bit to save batteries and make a kind of a more basic experience, and a kind of HD mode where you plug it in with the wires and it takes advantage of the PS5 more directly. That would not shock me if that's part of their plan, to have this thing sort of do both.
Yeah. Do you think it's a smart plan to launch PlayStation VR 2, Matt? At all?
I don't know if it's smart in terms of like having to breakout hit, but they're already hip deep in the research and the R&D and the brand. So like you might as well keep going.
But at some point, I mean, if VR never takes off, Sony's going to have to call it.
I think if this doesn't take off in the way, whatever their internal expectations are, we will probably not see a PSVR 3. Yeah. But that's years and years away.
Look, I give Sony credit for sticking with it at all after the sales of the first PlayStation VR. You only sell 2 million units. Like, your chances of selling software are really slim.
Somewhat, but I think expectations have been adjusted since then. Like, I know at the time, everybody, including I think Pactor, was like, oh, this is it. This is the revolution in video gaming forever. Like, nothing will be the same after VR. And VR came out, it was just like, bleh. It's like me.
Well, I mean, look, it made me sick. So
yeah. Well, also, I mean, I was a big fan of it doesn't make me sick. I really enjoy a lot of it, but like, it's just such a fucking hassle. Like, by the time I get everything set up, I don't want to play anything anymore.
There's nothing convenient about it.
No, not at all.
I would argue too, if PlayStation VR 2 is in fact tethered, that doesn't help with your biggest.
Doesn't help, but what would help is if hooking it up doesn't hobble the system. Like, that's what my biggest complaint with PSVR is, that the box, because I got a launch unit, the box doesn't allow you to do HDR. Yeah. So if I want to play something that isn't VR with HDR and properly on my TV, I got to unhook it and plug the HDMI cable back into the PS4. So if I could just have it hooked up all the time, maybe with a more like sane cable arrangement. Like, there's a lot of wires on that thing. Yep. But if I could have it kind of set up there all the time, and when I wanted to play it, I just had to pick up the controllers and grab the headset and it was ready to go, like, I would probably feel differently about it. The other thing, of course, is there hasn't really, other than Iron Man, there hasn't been anything that really grabbed my attention in PSVR world for like literal years.
Yeah, I think everybody agrees with you on that one. I think that's why the sales of it basically nosedived after the first year. Even though I'll say the software kept coming. Like, Sony did not give up, and third parties didn't give up either.
They kept doing stuff. I mean, Astrobot and that apparently that that gangster one, Blood and Truth or so. Yeah, apparently that was really good, but I never played it. I don't know.
It's all relative, Matt. I think when you say very good, it's like very good for a VR game.
Right.
It's always
and VR really needs a game, and I guess Half-Life Alyx is apparently that. But again, I have not had the ambition to pull out my Vive and rehook all that and drill holes in the wall to play one game.
What else needs to come out for like PlayStation VR? Like, why not? You need to sell more.
I think the new on PS5, I don't see any reason it wouldn't work. Like, it's like It's not like Valve wouldn't have made their money already, and they put Half-Life 2 on consoles.
Yeah.
So, years later, but it happened 3 years later. So who knows?
Do you think maybe Sony could have a wireless headset if they use some kind of video streaming technology like the Wii U used?
No.
Okay.
Like that's a non-starter because of the lag that would introduce.
Yep, that's what I figured. But I'm just trying to. I don't want a wired HMD, is what I'm getting at. I want a wireless one, and I'm not. Well, you're not. I don't think. I'm going to buy PlayStation VR, and
you're not going to get a wireless headset from PlayStation. I think they're at best you might get, like I said, a hybrid where you can unplug it and you kind of get like the headset contains, the like a base model PS4 sort of thing in it. And so you can play. It would be like playing, like the Quest. It would have like some hardware inside that lets you play it at a certain resolution and a certain quality, and that's what you get if you don't want to use wires. But if you want the boutique experience, you got to plug that sucker into the PS5.
Yep.
Which I think is a pretty good compromise if you can actually get it to work. But again, you are talking about something that has a substantial cost to it at that point.
Well, what do you think the cost needs to be for this thing to take off for PlayStation?
I really don't know. I have no idea.
The price of $300 honestly makes sense to me. I just don't think there's any way they can hit it.
It's hard to get. I think it'd be hard to get to 300 with what I assume Sony wants to put in this thing. I mean, maybe they could as long as they sell everything else separate. Like you got to buy the controllers separate and all that.
Which they could. I mean,
which
that's what Apple's doing now.
Yeah.
You can buy everything separate now, like a charger. You have to buy
well, did you hear like one of the big things that is expected for their next iPhone is that they're gonna not have a port on it anymore.
So everything's going to be wireless.
They'll all be wireless, all wireless charging and all that stuff, which, by the way, is when I go Android.
Yeah, I wouldn't be happy with that at all. It takes too long to do stuff for wireless. I plug my phone in to update my iOS and stuff.
Well, also charging wirelessly, it's like I got to buy all different charging things. I got to find places to put them. Yeah. Like I got to clear off space on things, whereas before I just had a cable. I stuck it in and put the phone on the surface somewhere.
On your phone, it doesn't work with
and I don't.
chargers.
And then I have I play in my car wired. I don't want to have to use Bluetooth for that because it's way unreliable. It's ridiculous. It's stupid.
We'll see if that one's true. I wouldn't be surprised though, because
wouldn't be surprised because Apple does tons of stupid. Look, I'm an Apple user from back in '86, but under Tim Cook, they have become complete idiots. It's just sad
they're making more
to
money
watch.
Than ever. Because they're a services company now. They don't.
Yeah, that's the one part. That's the part of me that really roots for Epic in that lawsuit. Is just teach those idiots a lesson about what it means to think ahead first. It's just ridiculous. But you get it. They're up in their little bubble of what Apple executives are. It's like the Oscars announcing today that they're going to do the ceremony in April in person. Yeah. It's like, okay, well, good luck. And I said that to one of my friends, and he's just like, well, they're probably just going to pay to vaccinate everybody who's involved in it. And I'm like, look, you're right. I mean, you're right. They probably could do that. But talk about confirming that whole thing is just a big elitist ivory tower piece of shit. You just confirm every terrible optic imaginable about Hollywood in one swoop. And I'm pretty sure,
Hollywood elite. There it is.
But there might be no one in the hallways making those decisions that would ever think of that.
Right.
You might have to talk to Susan Sarandon before anyone brings that up, right? And you have to start vaccinating people before someone's like, wait a minute, this is bad PR at the very least, right?
Well, a lot of times you just break it and then you fix it after people complain.
So that's what happens. So and also kind of what I mean by what I talked earlier about Pactor, knowing people in the biz dev world that just sort of all deal in this pie in the sky, no hardware streaming thing, and they're in this bubble that never acknowledges real world use cases. So that could be happening here with the PSVR stuff.
Are a problem across all of society.
Yeah.
Because the way algorithms work now, and the way, in all honesty, advertising works on social media, once they figure out what you're into, they keep you in there. Mm-hmm. And they don't let you get out or interact with people who aren't in that bubble. That's why our country is so divided over politics.
Well, that's what the algorithms
in the same
for.
Bubble with all the same people who believe the same crap. No one ever hears an alternate viewpoint anymore. So
well, that's what the algorithms are designed to do because they want to engage you further and pull you in. So like if you watch,
you like so that you keep coming back. Yeah.
So if you watch one or two like right-wing leaning videos, they're going to give you more and more extreme stuff. If you watch one or two left-wing leaning, they're going to be more and more extreme left-wing stuff. If you watch one or two gaming things, they're going to give you more and more in-depth, long. You're going to start throwing that H-bomber. You're going to start throwing that 2-hour H-bomber guy. What was it? 3-hour H-bomber guy Fallout 3 review at you, and like you're just going to pull you in and in and in. And like the bubbles, so that's always been something to some degree. It's always been there for one degree or another. But in one form of the bubble, like a bunch of executives launch a bad product that doesn't sell. In another form of the bubble, everyone this side of the bubble decides that children should starve. So it's the model has different consequences depending on what it's applied to.
Yeah, it's true. But that's how we're living. And I'm sure if you are a big Xbox fan or you are a big PlayStation fan, you're probably in a bubble and you don't even know it. You are around other people who believe all the same stuff that you do. And that's why you're getting this positive reinforcement all the time. And you go someplace like, say, watch GameFace, where Matt and I tell the truth, and you're like, whoa, these guys are crazy. No, we're not crazy. We're living in the real world.
I just can't. It's hard for me to imagine being a diehard fan.
One video about like wood carving, and next thing I know, my whole feed is flooded with freaking wood carving. Like it's that fast. Like
well, that happened with that even happened to me with
and it's just flooded with wood carving.
Well, that happened to me with I watched the G4 like reunion special, and immediately after that, it was supposed to go to the Gravy-thon stream where Adam played Among Us with the streamers and everything. But instead, there was a glitch there, and there was a gap. So instead of sending me to that, they sent me to some other random live stream. And it was like a bunch of bros talking about like how COVID's a hoax and like Trump really won the election. And I was like, how did I get, I never see shit like that because I don't watch nonsense. And like, I was like, what the hell? Like, how did I get here? So I just sort of like made fun of people in the chat and left. But like for days after that, I kept getting more and more like weird, right? Like it kept telling me I should watch Ben Shapiro. And I was like, fuck you.
Do you think
like what's
somebody like sabotaged you or something?
No, I think it's just what it decided to roulette me to because of the interest I had. Because the guys who were talking about this were also game people. They were gamer people. It just because of the things I like to watch, it assumed, hey, maybe he'll like this. And I do think there's a tendency for that algorithm to kind of throw you towards right-wing stuff because people get so into it that it's a good way to keep your engagement for a long time.
Yeah, because even if you don't believe it, you'll go and you'll be like, you guys are idiots.
Yeah, well, I can't expose. I know a lot of that already, and I can't expose myself to more of it because it's just derivative. But like, and it took me days to sort of like keep saying no, I'm not interested in this to get rid of that. It's just like
Well,
at least wood carving is just boring.
They're in a bubble with other people just like them, and sometimes they don't hear the real consumer anymore.
I just can't imagine being like a hardline fan of any of the three console makers because they all do shitty stuff so much. Like it's just like how can you possibly like side with one or the other because they're all terrible at one point or another. It's just no one's perfect.
Like kids who are like 8 to like 14 or whatever, like sure, be a fanboy, nobody cares. Once you're 18 and you can reason and you're an adult.
Well, not even that, especially like a lot of it comes from being younger and being like both indoctrinated in terms of how team sports work, because that's bad. Believe me, because I've seen, you've seen enough fights break out over who can throw the ball better. It's sort of like, oh, maybe this is not a good thing to teach people. But on top of that, it's like if you're younger and whatever, and you can only afford to buy one game console, you're going to try to convince yourself that the game console you bought was the right choice. Yeah. And a lot of it comes from that. And I was a big Sega fan, but I was never a huge like anti-Sony person. But once I was old enough to get like a job that paid me a fair amount of money and like in college and stuff, and was able to buy a Saturn and a PlayStation and a Nintendo 64, like that kind of opened up a lot of like mental doors. Like, oh, all of them have their good points and all of them have their weak points, and that's just how it is.
And PlayStation VR included, believe it or not.
But even I'm not dumb enough to buy a 3DO. So
nobody was. That's the problem the 3DO had. No one was that stupid. What was it? $600? Is that right?
It was $700. It was $1995 US dollars.
I knew no one who had one.
Which I think has to work out to close to like $1,100 in 2020 money.
Yeah. A friend later in life got one for like a few $100, and then I like messed around with it like a few years after it released. But nobody I knew got one at launch.
One of my suite mates in college got one, and he had with a bunch of he had like Street Fighter, and that's the first time I ever played Need for Speed because that was the first thing that was on. Supreme Warrior, that FMV like martial arts game, which he didn't even know how to play, and I figured out. I figured out one night, and he came back from like whatever party he was at, and he's just like, holy shit, I've never been able to get past one fight in this. And I was like, yeah, I'm almost done with the game. Here we go. He was really, I really liked him, but then he got pulled out of school because it turned out he was like stealing money from his parents to pay for all that shit. So, and when he left, he's like, I'm going to leave all this with you and come back for it at the end of the year. I was like, no problem. No, so I had a lot of stuff to play with.
Because he didn't want to take it home because his parents then would see all the stuff that he had bought with the money he stole.
Yeah, exactly. But he did come back and get it at the end of the year.
He did?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm surprised. I figured he would just be like, whatever, I'll never see you.
No, I mean, I knew it. I mean, we were friends before he ended up in my room. Like, so I was like, are you coming back for this? Or do I just get a free 3DO? He's like, no, I'm coming back. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's too expensive. So anyway, PlayStation VR 2, it's kind of taken shape, but it looks like it's taking the form of the older VR HMDs instead of kind of the new Quest stuff. Not confirmed yet, but we do have like 4 patents now, and they do all kind of seem to be pushing in that direction. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, Sony files a lot of patents. There was one that went up today that was for like a dual GPU version of a console, which like people were like, oh, is that what the PlayStation 5 Pro is going to be? Is dual GPU? And I brought it up to one of my developer friends, and he's like, that is complete nonsense.
Yeah.
Like,
you have to. Today, I was like, that's BS.
He's like, you'd have to redo the entire architecture of every. He's like, there's a lot of very solid reasons this is not what they're doing and not feasible that I do not have time to explain to your layman ass. Right so, and that was the end of that.
I need to get back to programming. Just trust me.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Oh, crap. Okay. Let's move on. We're going to talk, as I mentioned earlier, about pre-orders, which somehow still, here we are, a couple weeks after launch, are still...
Yeah, it's weird to call them pre-orders when you get them like a day later, but that's pretty much what we're calling them, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, are they pre-orders when the thing's already out? And now it's just trying to procure a console is what it comes down to, but they're still taking pre-orders, so... Yeah,
because you pre-order and then they fulfill them in like a day or two because they're only putting them up because they have stock. Right now it's happening too. Like, so a wave of them hit Costco at 1:15 p.m. today, PS5s. Out of nowhere. No one knew that was happening, but it happened, and they were gone in like a minute. There are rumors that midnight Pacific tonight, Target's going to have a bunch of PS5s, and people are using the My Store app to like check inventory.
Don't wait for tonight.
Don't wait for tonight. This is like
pre-recorded.
This is December 2nd. This is the night of December 2nd.
Sale to drop tonight.
Yeah, this is midnight December 2nd to December 3rd.
Yeah.
And there's rumors that because if you look at the My Store thing and look for PS5s, it shows something like 10,000 units in stock at Target stores. Not available for sale, but that the inventory updates before the shelves update, basically. I use that for Transformers. If they get new waves or exclusives in, I can see which stores have them and go and ask. And if they don't have them, a lot of times they'll go in the back and get them for me.
10,000, that's a lot for one retailer for a refresh.
I mean, that's country. That's U.S. wide, so it's not that much.
Oh. Okay.
But it's like 10,000 something right now in Targets across the nation.
3 minutes and 10 seconds.
3 minutes, maybe, if you're lucky. Yeah. So the rumor is midnight, December 2nd to December 3rd. I mean, technically December 3rd when midnight hits.
But this is what you're going to have to do to get one.
Yeah, I mean,
you're going to have to follow.
I mean, if you're on the East Coast, you're up at 3 for that, right? So, and it's just like that's what's happening.
Not worth it, but look,
it's worth it.
Work right now, and it's worth it. If you can spend $500 and make $1,500, and your unemployment's about to expire, look, if you're one of those people and you're scalping these consoles to put food on the table, I have no problem with you at all, none. And it's
but I also think if the people that are scalping them to put food on the table, you already had $500, so or more.
If you can turn that $500 into $1,500 or whatever they're going for on eBay right now. I mean, it's a safe bet. If you see that there's like 1,000 consoles on there, they're all going for at least $1,000.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind people that buy a couple extra and do that, like flip them like that. But it's the scalpers of the bots that are getting hundreds of them that piss me off.
So we thought we had problems with scalpers in the U.S. on launch week, and as you guys know, PlayStation 5 came out a week later in Europe, and as it turns out, things have been even worse in Europe, like way worse. The scalpers there, unlike the scalpers here who just get their consoles, make their money, and keep their mouths shut, the scalpers in Europe are brazen, and they go on social media, and they brag about it. Well, one of the scalping organizations, who, by the way, was charging people €30 to teach them how to scalp, were busted. And all the orders that they had placed were canceled, and they ended up losing their allotment. Again, after they went on Twitter and bragged about how many consoles that they had just secured. So there is a way to track these people down, but you have to rely on them to basically blow their own cover, which is mostly never going to happen. And then to try and quell some of these issues, Europe has finally done what the U.S. probably should have done and moved to a raffle system to sell the consoles. This has been going on in Japan for decades at this point. Instead of making people like stand in line and like first come, first serve, you just go in and you buy it, and then you show up on launch day with your ticket and you pick it up. And to buy them, there's a raffle. You put your name in, and only X number of people get them. And if you don't get it, you got to come back for the next raffle. That's what they're starting to do in Europe. It's probably what they should have done in the U.S. They could still do it in the U.S. if they wanted to, but for whatever reason, we're very resistant to change in the United States of America. I don't know why that is. Why is our country so stubborn in that way?
I don't know, but we also love leaving our fates up to randomness, to really, we all as Americans pretty much live one medical crisis away from financial disaster. So why not use a raffle system for your game console?
Trying to give us health insurance. I don't understand it. It's so weird.
They don't teach a lot of basic logic in school these days, and that might be intentional.
It might be. Who knows?
So there probably should be some kind of raffle system, especially in this year where you can't do the thing where they used to do the thing was you got there in line, everybody got their tickets for how many they had. If you didn't get a ticket, you weren't going to get one, so go home. This version of reality where everything's online and you're kind of camping out the websites for whatever is a little more frustrating, I think, because there's no way to know, and there's all these ways you could fail that are, the site might not work for you, or you might not, your web browser could crash, or the internet doesn't work right, or there's all these different ways that you might not get it, and you don't know whose fault it is, or your fault or their fault or this fault, what's going on. Or the bot's fault from the scalpers. It says, there's so many different ways you could blame things, and it creates this extra level of frustration. And especially when all the rumors happen, it's I camped Costco out and then I didn't get it, and Target and I didn't get it, and Best Buy and I didn't get it, and PlayStation Direct and I didn't get it. And at a certain point, you lose out so many times that people just get really mad about it.
Or you quit, which is what happened to me. And I just randomly at 1 a.m. before I went to bed went and checked the website and had it. And I just got lucky. I mean, I went through the whole process, got sick of it, gave up, passed out on the couch, woke up at 1:30 in the morning. I'm like, I'll look before I go back to bed. And there it was. And I got a freaking... Yeah,
I almost tried to get one last week because there was a bunch of sales of them going up in the run up to Black Friday. And I almost thought I bet I'm going to have someone, at least one person ask me if I know where to get one after Black Friday week. And maybe I should just get one in anticipation of that, whoever that is. Yeah. And I didn't. In the end, I was like, And then, of course, immediately on Monday, 5 people are like, do you know where to get a PlayStation 5? I was like, no.
Well, your intuition was right. You knew people maybe didn't realize when launch day was, but once it hit, they were going to be like, oh, crap, now I need one.
They knew, but a lot of them didn't think it would still be sold out by now.
Yeah.
I don't know why they would think that, but like I said, several of them are more casual. A couple of them are parents looking for it for their kids. They just don't know. They don't know the world of it like we do, you know.
And there's Wario 64.
And let's be honest. Most retail products aren't like this.
Yeah.
You know, usually you can just find whatever you need in the space of a couple weeks.
Like Apple sells iPhones. Just sell them to anybody who's willing to pay, and they get in line. And you can tell them, like, you are person 10,581 in line. If you're okay with that, submit. And as soon as we have a unit for you, we will ship it to you.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that the reason Apple can do that, but the reason Apple can do that is because they have a giant retail pipeline they've curated for 25 years.
Yeah.
And like Sony doesn't do that.
GameStop or Best Buy.
And that's a complete non-starter.
Yeah,
like it's just Anyone who's tried to get anything through any of those retail outlets knows they don't even know where they are, let alone where your PlayStation is. So, and even, I mean, maybe that would be a thing eventually. Like maybe for PlayStation 6, PlayStation Direct might be robust enough to handle a system like that. Obviously, that wouldn't be the only way to get one, but it might be a more conservative way to get one. You know what I mean?
Nobody buys consoles directly from like the Microsoft and Sony websites. They're there. You can go there and you can buy them. But nobody goes there. Everybody goes to GameStop or Best Buy because you've just been trained to do it. But ask somebody where they're going to buy their new iPhone, they're going to the Apple Store.
The Apple Store. Well, that's the other thing is like, you can go to the Apple Store.
Yeah.
Right? Like there, there is a Microsoft, or there was a Microsoft store here in the Culver City Mall.
There's one at Century City Mall.
Century City Mall, right? And there was a Microsoft store there too.
That's what I'm
I don't know if there's still that.
Century City too.
I don't know if that's one. There's a lot of Apple stores around, but it's more unusual to see a Microsoft store.
Oh, way more unusual.
Or a Sony store. There's a Sony store there too. There was. That had a PlayStation section, but that's the thing is the Apple Store is ubiquitous. Microsoft stores and Sony stores are not, and
There's
probably
no
will never
way to turn
be.
it around. The way the public does this, they're just too used to doing it the way they've always been doing it, and it would be great if everybody could do that. You just go to Xbox.com and be like, I want a Series X. You buy it, and they're like, okay, you're going to get it in 6 weeks or whatever.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing is people want it launch day.
Yeah.
And it would be nice if you could go to Xbox.com, say that, and I want it delivered to my local Best Buy, and I'll pick it up there. But again, that would require a level of communication, logistics, and sophistication that we simply do not have in the retail chain.
Well, we could have it, but it would take a big investment. And companies like Apple make that investment.
And you would inevitably have to partner with that could be a good lucrative way for GameStop to stay alive another couple of years, but it's too late now.
True. Yeah, but they would have had to have thought of that 3 years ago.
And yep.
GameStop is not very forward thinking. There's one thing I know about GameStop. It's not very forward thinking.
But if you need a Game of Thrones Funko Pop,
they got you covered.
Let me tell you.
8 different versions that you can pick from. Pre-orders aren't just for consoles. It just, for whatever reason, consoles are what drives the most ire and the most headlines.
Certainly this time, for sure.
I mean, I'll say this. I can tell from the last batch of Pactor Factor questions that there's a lot of you out there struggling trying to find one. And you're still struggling. So
I do think there's an extra level of frustration this time just because as much as I wouldn't ever do it, I think there's a satisfaction or a feeling that you're making some kind of progress by going and standing in line somewhere. You know what I mean? Like if you're out there in line in the cold at Best Buy waiting for that next batch of systems and it's kind of like it feels like you're doing something proactive. Whereas if you just sit in your house like you have for the last 9 fucking months, and you're refreshing that stupid web page, and all of a sudden, like the time comes, the web page won't even load. Yeah. Like that, there's nothing satisfying about that. Yeah. At least if you're out there doing something like and even like you always say about how like you meet some people and you talk about it with people and you maybe make a friend or two, like you feel like you got something out of the experience. Yeah. Whereas like this is just the same frustration over and over and over and over.
You by yourself. With the computer screen shining on your face.
Yeah, so part of it, I think, is this is just worse than it's ever been.
Worse, yeah. And the demand's more, too, because everyone's trapped at home and everybody wants video games, and it sucks. But I feel for you guys. I know a lot of you guys are still trying. I know Matt and I have told you a million times to follow Wario64, but really do it. Like, he can help you find a console. He does the legwork nobody else wants to do.
I mean, he tweets a lot of irrelevant stuff. Like, I understand why people are yelling about all the eShop deals he tweeted, but like, I wouldn't have my systems without him tweeting about where the things were.
Of thousands of people who would say the same exact thing. So he's your best bet, but keep trying. I mean, you never know. I got lucky. When I got mine, I got lucky.
Yeah, as someone who does.
It's 1 in the morning, I should go to bed. I'll try to refresh one more time, and I did, and there it was. Like, just don't give up.
Yeah, as someone who collects a lot of hard to find stuff, and like the random I'm about to go to bed, but it's the middle of the night, and I'm just going to check one more time thing. It works once in a while. Like, try it.
Most people aren't trying like you are, so don't give up. Keep trying. I do feel for you. I know you guys are really going through it out there trying to find one. And it is doubly frustrating when you see people using a bot to snatch up like 1,000 consoles.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it.
And if you do find it in the middle of the night, finish your order before you tell anyone about it.
Yes.
That's okay.
Cover your ass first. We're 100% okay with that.
Save yourself before you try to save others. Is the first rule of first
like
aid.
An oxygen mask when you're on a flight.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about we actually have a question about this later on during the Q&A, but what probably is going to end up becoming or being the biggest video game flop of 2020, and that is Marvel's Avengers.
It's one of the most high profile.
Yeah, it was divulged this week that Avengers still has not recouped its development costs. It has lost money to this point. Matt, do you think that there's any remedy for that? Do you think they'll ever break even on this game?
I don't know. Like, I do know a fair number of people. I know a fair number of people who actually bought it last week. When it was half price. I don't know if that helps them.
Well, it does, because they're hoping to get people into the ecosystem so that they finish the campaign and stick around for the game as a service.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the campaign, and that's about it. Like, I think there's no greater testament to how uncompelling the post-game content is than the fact that I refuse to give it space on my PlayStation 5.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care what's going on in Avengers right now.
Better if it was just a campaign. If it was just like Marvel Spider-Man, and it was just a campaign with the Avengers.
Yes.
So
I think it would have.
Here's my real question about this game is, did the extra content hurt the game? As far as like with critics and word of mouth?
I think it did.
That's crazy to think about. Because
I think if you just done a more straightforward campaign, because remember, the campaign, as much as I enjoyed the campaign, it was also damaged by the fact that it had to fit into that game as a service mold. Like when you go out to the missions, you are very aware that you are playing these compartmentalized areas and missions that are, they make it story driven enough to keep your interest, but they do feel pretty generic on the ground, and you can see kind of the Destiny pedigree coming through, and that doesn't happen in Spider-Man. That doesn't happen in the Arkham games, and it's because they're a more cohesive whole. And also, I think
to be single player games.
Yeah, and I also think you are dealing with. There was a lot of negative press and a lot of negative sentiment around this game because of all that. Like, I think if it had just been a straightforward single player campaign with all the bells and whistles that you expect from like maybe what Insomniac makes with Spider-Man, there would have been a generally more positive feeling about it in sort of the core gaming world, and that word of mouth would have spread and more people would have been willing to give it a chance, because as soon as people heard that there was any kind of like online microtransaction element, you are instantly turn off a huge like kind of fraction of your potential audience. And people are literally waiting for a half price or a lower opportunity to even try the thing. And I think
part of the problem, though, do you think critics and game reviewers are partly to blame? Do you feel like they should be able to compartmentalize the game and look at the game and be like, there's this really good campaign, and you know what? Usually when I review games, if there's a really good campaign, that's enough for me to give a game a good score. But there's that, but there's this other stuff tacked on at the end, and I'm going to dock the score for that. How do you jungle that in your mind as a game?
I mean, the campaign, I only think of the campaign as about half the game, even though it's like 90% of what I actually played, because I just didn't care about the post-game stuff beyond a certain level.
But I wouldn't have regretted if I paid full price for that game and just played the campaign. Like, it was long enough that I wouldn't have felt like cheated. It wouldn't have been like one of those games that I recommend like top of the list for the year or anything like that. But I don't think people would have felt cheated if they bought the game.
Somewhat. If it had just been the campaign, I would have liked it to be a different game in some ways.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I hear what you're saying. You're right. There are some elements of the single player stuff in that are basically bending over backwards to fit in with the gas style of design. Yeah.
And I think there's just some people, I think it's at least in the core gaming world, there's a significant group of people that as soon as they hear that stuff is in the game, they just don't want to support that. no matter how good the campaign is. I saw a lot of people on Twitter and various places saying, like, I know everyone's saying the campaign's good and I'm interested, but I'm going to wait until it's like $20 or $30 because I don't want to throw full price at Square and reward them for doing this with this game. Honestly, I think like the model that they should have been following for these games is the Lego one. Like the Lego games know what they're doing when it comes to adapting a license into something everybody wants to play. And they do a very long campaign with a lot of levels that are focused on things you recognize. They don't do the microtransaction stuff. There's occasional season pass stuff, but it feels like this level is a complete level built for this thing to get this part of the story across, and it works. And that's the kind of thing we should have done.
Like, you got to aim higher with Avengers. You just have to. That license costs too much.
It has nothing to do with that. The Lego games don't sell the way they sell because of their level design. I'm saying that that's the structure you could use if you don't want to like break the mold and do an open world game with the Avengers. But the Lego games don't feel like that they have like that you're missing out on parts of or you're gonna have to go back to those levels and do another generic mission after the game's over in order to collect Fusil 5 so you can get armor 12. It's like there's just this like this and Destiny has that too, or did in the original like older campaign stuff. Certainly the expansion stuff had that element where it's just like you felt like you were going through sort of like cardboard sets grafted on top of an existing open area. And Avengers never manages to really transcend that in a lot of places, and it carries itself through with the characters and the narrative for the most part. But once you get down to like the fighting on the ground, as much as I like the combat system, it always felt a little bit like I was fighting in just sort of random zone. And I know that that's because they had to have basically generic zones for you to do the generic missions in the post game. And maybe they're going to fix some of that with like the character packs and like kind of further post-launch content. But like we haven't seen, like they've been dead silent for 6 months almost.
Well, they've delayed a bunch of stuff that was supposed to come
out. Like we're supposed to get like Hawkeye's like this week or something, or Kate Bishop.
The problem is the game was so busted at launch that they dedicate so much time to just basically putting out fires that they haven't been able to work on the extra content. And I don't think DLC is going to save this game. I think what will help this game break even, it's going to be the game as a service stuff, getting people in there, spending money on microtransactions. But I'll tell you what would. And I do not think this game's going to make money. If it does, I think it'll break even like a year and a half, 2 years from now when they're selling copies for like 15 to 20. Yeah,
they would have to stick with it for a very long haul. The other thing I think that would help them is I don't know. I don't think we don't really know how Square will roll with this. Although Square did tear Final Fantasy 14 down to the ground and rebuild the whole thing at one point. So it's not like they're afraid to like double down on something they believe in. That's true. So we'll see. The other thing I think that could help, obviously do the character packs and the that kind of thing. Like a year and a half from now, if you do the Destiny thing and start putting out like really solid campaign stuff, like, when the expansions come out for Destiny 2, like they have a really robust campaign with a good story and all that stuff. If you do that again with Avengers, like I'll come back for that. Like I would come back for an Avengers 2 that has a new, that has Hydra as the enemy or something and tells a new story and brings some new characters in and kind of builds on the world that because that's the other thing with,
well, you just answered my last question, which was, is there going to be a sequel?
I think they should expand on it, and the sequel should be something like, like Beyond Light was, where Beyond Light really seems like it's probably what Destiny 3 was going to be if Activision didn't let them go. Yep. But instead they didn't, so they were able to make Beyond Light part of the Destiny 2 platform, which I think is smart. It is smart. And I think Square should do the same with Avengers. Because part of the problem with, I love the campaign. Part of the problem is that the way the campaign ends, it's like the campaign ends by getting everything back to the status quo, or at least a new form of the status quo. The Avengers are together, everything's okay, the team is assembled, the helicarrier works, like the Avengers are back.
Make the game as a service work.
Right. But the problem is that you've set up this great premise, like at the end of that game for like, okay, now the Avengers can go out and have some real fucking adventures, some real classic adventures we can bring. And then nothing happened.
Yeah,
like,
that's when
there's nothing else to do.
Part of the game kicks in. Yeah.
So I'm saying, like, do a campaign that takes advantage of the fact that your first campaign sets it up as like the Avengers team is together, ready to go and ready to handle anything the world throws at them. Throw some real shit at them. Like, let's have Thanos show up or something. Like, let's go crazy. Like, put the Infinity Gems out there. Like, do some classic Marvel stuff and get people's attention. That like, I want to play this. I want to do this. I want to fight Terrax and the Silver Surfer and all these, like, go crazy. Like, throw some crazy stuff in here. Go outside the lines a little bit. Figure out a way for me to play Ant-Man. There's a lot of stuff you can do that like would get my attention again. And the thing that got my attention the most in the original campaign is how well they, I don't like AIM. I think AIM is a boring villain. I think AIM is a dumb, and I get really tired of fighting yellow things by the end of the game. But like. But as someone who isn't a fan of AIM in the comics, I thought they did a pretty good job of making AIM something more interesting. And what they did with MODOK was cool. Like, they did a pretty good job in kind of the MCU style of taking this ridiculous comic book thing and kind of making it work in a new form. I like that. I thought that was neat. And there's a lot of hints near the end of the game that like where they might go next, involving like the Eternals and Terrigen stuff and Inhuman stuff and all that, which would be cool. But just there's a lot of teases for sequel-y stuff at the end of the campaign. Do it, like, get there. And I don't know if that's already their plan to do a full like second campaign at some point, but I hope it is, because that was definitely the strongest part of that whole experience. Yep. I realize it doesn't sell a lot of microtransactions, but I would pay like $50 or $40 for a new campaign on that thing.
So you're saying yes to a sequel? I agree. The license is too big. There's too much opportunity here. If they do make a really great game, it will be one of the best-selling games of the year. So I think the potential that's there. There's also there's kind of a vacuum right now in the MCU. It's a shame that Square Enix took so long to get this one done, because they can't strike while the iron is hot.
Right. Well, also this could have been a really good opportunity for them, because this is the first year since 2009 with no new Marvel Cinematic Universe content.
That's the point I was making.
Yeah.
They really had an opportunity here, and unfortunately it didn't.
No.
So, but I do think there'll be a sequel. I do think Square Enix is playing the long game with this.
My only concern would be Marvel pulling the license.
I don't think the game was that bad.
No, but Marvel and Disney tend to be a little impatient about immediate returns on interactive and video game stuff. Marvel, Disney has basically shut their.
You can give it to.
Yeah, well, Disney has shut down their interactive and video game stuff multiple times. It's amazing how often that happens. Like, there's like, okay, we'll try the video game thing again. 2 years later, it's like, right. And then like 2 years later, like, oh, this didn't pay immediate dividends. We're just gonna shut it all down.
It's like, just read your own book.
It's like Disney Infinity. Remember that Toys to Life thing they did? It's like, yeah, there was something there. Like, they had something cool going on there, and they just fucking killed it. Like, there was already
Gen 8 catchphrase, Toys to Life.
Yeah.
I don't know we'll be talking about that much going forward.
Probably not. We'll be talking about it when I drag the box full of them out of the closet, because I sure have a lot of those fucking things.
It's the guitar games. Guitar games were the prior generation thing that died last generation, and now
Well, did you see, like, I think, was it yesterday? It's either yesterday or the end of this month. The thing you can buy that lets you transfer Rock Band 3 to Rock Band 4 on Xbox is no longer available.
Dude, they put out DLC for Rock Band 4 every week.
Yeah.
They have put out DLC for Rock Band 4 every week since SIFTD launched. Over 5 years straight of DLC every week.
Harmonix doesn't play around.
It's insane. It really is. I need to try out Fuser. As a DJ and a huge gamer, I should check out Fuser.
Yeah, I've read some stuff, but it's interesting. It's just too expensive for me to try out from curiosity.
I'm going to try to beg them. I'm going to send one of my latest mix and be like, yo, I've been doing this game stuff for a long time. I've been DJing since like 1993. Hook a brother up.
What is it? What kind of game is it? Is it just
a DJ? Like,
just DJs?
Yeah. Yeah, one of my friends, Pete Moss, has a track in the game. And he's underground. Like, he is underground house DJ. I don't think he's ever played to a crowd bigger than like 3,000 people. And he's in the game. It's amazing. All my friends that are producing music now, like, there is a new thirst for music just in general. People need music for everything, all the games and films, and it's trickling down even into like my underground friends who are making crazy underground house. They're making money. It's really good to see. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about Sony, who right now is making more money than it can probably even count with the launch of the PlayStation 5. PlayStation 4, it's basically twilight. There's tons of them out there. They're making a ton of money off of software. So maybe they could cut fans a break, but that was not the case this week. What has happened?
Have you met Sony?
Yeah, exactly.
It's not how they roll.
What has happened, and I think everybody is asking themselves this question right now, and in fact, somebody asked this question in the Q&A at the end of the show, which is, I have a PS5. What do I do with this huge library of PlayStation 4 games that I have, and my PlayStation 4 that I have, that I don't need anymore? And so people have been asking themselves this question, and they've been answering it with, I am going to sell the access to my PlayStation 4, PlayStation Plus library. Basically just give people your login and your password, they give you money, and they have access to all these games that are in your library. Well, people have been doing that. PlayStation figured out that people were doing it, and now PlayStation has decided that it is going to stop it. How do you feel about this, Matt? Do you feel like
I don't really understand it. Like, so you're just giving people your account? Like, what are you using on the PS5? You making a new account on the PS5?
I suppose, and you're just getting your games on the PlayStation 5 going forward.
That seems really short-sighted to me, but okay. Also, I would never trade my gamer name for any. Like, I wouldn't change my name on things. I've had the same PSN account since the PS3.
I wouldn't either. I've had Dinfire, and I'm not giving up Dinfire anywhere. I just got Dinfire back in Call of Duty. Somebody had taken it, and I had like these name change tokens sitting there, and I was like, why not? I'll try it. And sure enough, whoever had taken the name had let it lapse, and I got it back. So, but I'm like you. Like, to me, my identity and things like that are more important. And plus, I want the library, but we're different.
Yeah.
We want that because we want to be able to go back, and we get a new game. We want to be able to go back and play the old one to compare it and things like that. Most people don't care about that. Once they've played something or decided that they don't want to play it, they don't care.
Yeah, and I thought there was also a thing where like people were like making a new PlayStation Plus account that would give you access to all the PlayStation Plus games in the library that was available now, and then like just sharing the logins. So you had like 40 people logging in on the same account, basically.
Yeah, too. Yeah.
And Sony was going after that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fair. It's obviously an abuse of the system. I get it.
How do you feel I mean, the bigger discussion here really is, how do you feel about being able to sell your accounts? Do you feel like you should be able to do that? Do you feel like when you're old, and do you feel like you should be able to, in your will somebody your Steam library, or will somebody your PlayStation account or your Xbox account? I think you should be able to.
I would say you should be. I mean, also, like, who's going to know? Like people are getting caught on this because they're letting multiple people log in on the same account for the most part. Like, if I hand down my Steam account to my niece, she's just going to log in instead of me because I'm not going to be here anymore. And how's Valve going to know unless they do the math? And it's like, this guy's had an account for 120 years. He's clearly not the same person anymore.
I mean, eventually it would get to a point where they're like, wait a minute, this person's 180 years old. So we both agree that willing something or gifting your account should be okay. What about selling them?
I mean, I would consider selling them kind of a risk because you're selling something that has like your personal information to some degree. If you feel like you can scrub it enough, like, fine, sure. Like, but
the question is, should you be able to? Like, should Steam be able to stop us from selling our Steam libraries?
I mean, I don't see why they should be able to.
Why should they be able to? I can't think of a single reason why they should be able to.
I don't know. I mean, from their perspective, they want to sell everybody things as many times as they can. So,
other than their terms of service, which probably says in there somewhere, like,
it probably says it's non-transferable in some way.
It's not transferable.
And I feel like they're not going to come after you if you like give your Steam. If you're 90 years old and you give your Steam account to your nephew, like they're probably not going to come for you on that one.
You're right, but it's the selling.
But the selling, it seems to be the thing
and be like, here's my PlayStation account. It has 800 games in it. Here's the games I want. $4,000 or whatever you end up asking for it. Like to me, you should be able to do that. You have those. The problem is with these end user licensing agreements, they tell you don't actually own anything. So legally, they have an out, which is, no, we own that stuff. You're just borrowing it, and that's what you're paying.
Right. Well, the way around that would be you own the password. Yeah. You're just selling the password. I'm
talking about the code itself, the game
code. But you never will own that. That's not how that works. You own a license to access it. But like the legal way around that would be to say that you are selling a password. And you just happen to tell them, oh, you might want to try this on a Valve account with this email. Yeah, like it's true. That's all.
Look, if they're going to use technicalities to do what they want to do, which is put whatever in their user agreement, then we should be allowed to use technicalities to get what we want as well, I think.
Yeah, and we do. I mean, yeah, there's not much they can do to stop someone who wants to do that.
From selling?
Yeah.
I thought that it feels like there's been stories where that's happened.
It has, but it's because of high-profile mass sellers. Like usually they go after people that are doing it repeatedly. The other thing about selling accounts that can become a security risk is that it incentivizes stealing people's accounts.
Yeah.
So if you see someone that has like thousands of games, if you run into someone who has thousands of games on their Steam account, you've got an incentive to figure out how to hack their account and sell their account somehow.
Why are people always trying to hack my Blizzard account? I get emails all the time. Someone's trying to log in on a device that we didn't recognize. Why is it that Blizzard accounts are the ones that people go after so much?
I don't know for certain because I don't get that much. I do think
my password there like 10 times.
I know that Blizzard accounts or Battle.net account are sometimes targeted if they're old because they assume you have like exclusive stuff that goes way back. Like my World of Warcraft account has collector's edition stuff unlocked going back to the original release. So if you want that fucking panda, that's the only way I'm a good target because then you could sell that off with original collector's edition stuff. Yeah. So that's maybe that. Like that's the only thing I can think of. Because I mean I've looked. Sealed World of Warcraft collector's editions still go for hundreds of dollars. Because people want those exclusive. Or maybe it was a Diablo pet. I can't remember.
I mean, this whole discussion is why I still buy physical games.
I don't find it that particularly, that doesn't help you with Blizzard. Like there is no physical game for Blizzard.
No, but I'm saying like these platforms basically owning stuff that you paid for, they own it. You're just basically renting it from them. That's why a big reason why I buy a lot of retail and like physical games is because I own it. It's the only thing that you own anymore.
Like technically, you don't own that either. So, like, when you buy a physical game disc, you're under the same EULA. You own a license to play that software. You do not own that software.
But that is away from me is the difference.
I mean, they could if they
take away my account from me, and I can't touch it again.
The Sony SWAT team, I guess, could come take your discs if they wanted. But they can block you from playing that game if they want.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And that was also the argument, it didn't work, but it was an argument that was made to try to stop used game sales. Was that people didn't have the right to sell the game to anyone because they basically own the right to play that software. They did not own the right to resell it. And the argument was obviously made that, well, they're not reselling the software. They're reselling the physical item and the software happens to be on it. Yeah. So you can't take away someone's right to sell a physical item. Right. Well, all law is technicality, Shane.
It is. I mean,
that's
all
right, it is.
Actually, by design, that's what it is.
Yeah. Like that's all it is.
Yeah.
Digital stuff. I mean, digital stuff is no more or less solid. I mean, discs rot. Like they deteriorate. You can lose them and there's just as much likelihood that my Sega CD discs are going to rot themselves, just because it's not very likely, as there is that Sony's going to one day decide that I just don't get to download anything anymore. Like it's not going to happen. Like Steam is never going to take all my games away. It's just not going to happen. But it's an access thing, and obviously it's easier to have it on a disc if you want to install it from that, but then you got to update it.
Loan it to somebody, or
there's loan it to some people. That's one thing. I haven't done that too often, although that happens when if I get real impatient and I buy one of those like release date, street date broken games physically, so I can play it a few days early. I'll usually give that physical copy to someone else once the digital comes out. so that's the only kind of really time I do that. And I still collect the physical Yakuza games, even though I don't open them, just because I love that series and I want them on my because I want them on my shelf. I love that series, so I just sort of collect them. It's a collector's item to me. I don't expect them ever to be worth anything, but it's just I like having them on the shelf.
Yep.
So yeah, I don't know. Like it doesn't really freak me. I don't care really what happens to my Steam account after I die. Like someone else can figure that out. It's not a big deal to me.
I'll be honest with you. Like when I'm like 75 or whatever, and like I don't care about that library anymore, I want to sell it. I'll just be perfectly honest, and I want to sell my PlayStation Plus account, and I'm gonna want to sell my Xbox Live account. I'm gonna. And those things by then should be worth a ton of money. Imagine how many games I'll have in those libraries by the time like 15, 20 years from now. So I think this is something where as digital becomes more of a thing, I think perspectives are going to change on it. And I think eventually by the time we do get to that age, I think we'll be able to sell this stuff. I just think we do. I think perceptions will change. Eventually, there'll be enough pressure from... Because, look, you got to realize, over time, there's going to be a lot of people like us with a lot of money and time built into these libraries. I think eventually they'll relent and we'll be able to sell this stuff. But they're fighting it tooth and nail because they kind of have to.
Also, like, look, I don't think they'll ever be able to stop you from doing the technicality thing of just being like, I'm selling my password.
Right.
I'm selling my PSN password. And when whoever wins the auction for it or whatever, you then tell them the password.
They like shuts those auctions down because they get, heat from PlayStation.
Well, then go to another place to sell it then. Like, there's plenty of options for that. Even if it's just finding someone at a fucking flea market nearby. Like, it's like, here's my, give me $1,000. Here's my login for my PSN account that I've had since 2006. Yeah. Like, it's got a ton of stuff on it.
Yep.
I'm sure there's a limit to how much they can track that stuff.
Limit to how much they can limit.
Yeah. I mean, I don't care. I mean, at most, I would probably just leave the passwords for people. But again, like I'm pretty morbid, but I'm not morbid enough to spend a lot of time worrying about what happens to my Steam account when I die. That's just not on my list
Your
of
younger
concerns.
relatives may worry about it more than you do.
I promise they do not. I promise they do not, because they don't care about what I play.
Yeah, well,
they do not.
You got to realize by the time that comes, you could have like your nephews and nieces could have kids by then.
Yeah, and they will care even less about games from 2007.
You're probably right. Unless they're just like you, Matt, which one of them could be.
Yeah, but
you're gonna
even I don't really care about games from 2007 anymore. So
touche. All right, let's move on. I mentioned earlier we're going to talk
because let's not forget the people that get caught selling this stuff. They didn't get caught because they're trying to preserve or pass down their things to other people. They wanted to make some cheap money and keep what they already had. Like that, it was just another thing like that.
It's a little scam. Yep.
I don't have a whole lot of problem with what Sony did on this. I don't have a whole lot of problem with them trying to with these people trying to do what they did.
Because
like
they're double dipping is what it is really. Yep. Okay, let's move on. We mentioned earlier we're going to talk about Halo Infinite, and we are right now. Now that I've had my Xbox...
Halo Infinite number of GameFace topics.
Yeah. Now that I've had my Xbox...
I'm never going to be done with this fucking game.
No, definitely not. Now that I've had my Xbox Series X for a while, it didn't bother me that much that Halo Infinite wasn't there when I first got it, but now it does. Every time I boot up Call of Duty Cold War, I could be playing Halo Infinite online instead. And so...
Do you really think you'd like Halo Infinite more than Call of Duty?
I don't know. Maybe. If it's vehicle-based. Somebody mentioned to me, I think on Twitter or on the site, they were like, Halo Infinite's multiplayer could be probably the closest thing to, like, Tribes Remastered that you're going to find. And they're right. Like, it could be if they really make use of the vehicles and change the structure of how they've done their vehicle-based stuff a little bit, or maybe just set aside a separate mode for it. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, I do have interest in it. I am excited to learn more about Infinite on the idea that it could be something along those veins, at least. But there was news that came out this week, and some that Microsoft had to swat down. The biggest one was that there was a Battle Royale mode coming to Halo Infinite. And I'll say this, we curated this story because it came from a reliable source. one that is usually very reliable. But Microsoft came out the next day and said that's hogwash. In fact, a couple of developers from 343 went on their Twitter feeds and were like, this is garbage. This is absolutely not true. They could be lying, but I think they're probably not. Or maybe it's just something that's coming like later on, because another thing that we learned about Halo Infinite this week is that the way the game is going to be structured and released is it's going to be released in modules, much in the way that Microsoft has handled the Master Chief Collection, which sounds cool because that means when something is done that they can release it right then. But then it also makes you wonder, okay, well, are they going to prioritize the stuff that I want them to prioritize? So if I'm someone who just wants to play the campaign in Halo Infinite, are they going to get the campaign done first, or are they going to get the multiplayer done first? Because
are they going to put the campaign out in like installments?
Right.
Because that'll be annoying.
Chapters at a time. Because when a game is modular like this, you can do whatever you want, and that's an awesome thing in some ways, but it can also be very scary, and it can result in delays of things that you really want versus the stuff that you don't care that much about.
Yeah, and ask Kentucky Route Zero fans about that one.
I mean, that's the best example you could have used, actually, is that game. And they still haven't released a final... No, they did. They released
they did. Yeah.
Yeah, finally. After, what, 9 years, 8 years?
Yeah, it was like a year ago. It was like that last December, this January. Yeah.
They finally put out the last episode after like 8 or 9 years of stringing people along. I don't think that's what's going to happen with Infinite. I do think they're going to plow forward, and they're trying to get all this stuff done as quickly as they can. I just wonder if their priorities are the same as mine, or if they're the same as yours. You should be wondering that too. Another thing that came out this week is that we are going to get another look at the game before the end of the year. And I think anybody who has the ability to reason would logically assume that that is going to happen at the Game Awards, which, as you mentioned earlier, are happening on the same day as the release of Cyberpunk 2077. Do you agree?
Bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see how it works out for them.
I mean, either Microsoft does its own little Halo Infinite event, which I really struggle to think Microsoft would do because...
Yeah, not at this point.
That's too much of a tease for a game that's not...
Maybe closer to release, but
My guess is there's going to be a chunk of some type of gameplay. It could be more of the campaign. It could be multiplayer debut. But I think Jeff will have some kind of a chunk. I mean, look, they need it. He needs it. It's a match made in heaven right now.
They'd probably do multiplayer, I would think, because then it's a world premiere.
Right, yeah. Because just having an extra piece of the campaign, that you can't bill it the same way as the first look at multiplayer, the exclusive multiplayer reveal, world premiere, all that crap.
So if you do you could do single player and just have it be like, let's try this one more time.
Score with feeling. I don't know, but I would guess...
Please don't hate what we're about to show you. It's like...
Please close the Twitter app.
Start your tweeting.
I mean, I don't blame them for feeling that way because they really got lit up after the last kind of shortcomings with Halo Infinite. And so my guess is the Game Awards, we're going to get another look at it.
Yeah.
What are we going to need to see to turn around public sentiment on Halo Infinite? Seriously.
I have no idea. I don't know.
To see something like a Tribes, something that doesn't look like Halo, where they're like, okay, they look like Spartans, but otherwise, like, this could be something else. I think that's what they're going to have to need to make an impact. If it's just more freaking warthogs flying around with some dude in the back with a turret trying to shoot shit, like, that's not going to get it done. It's just not.
Yeah, honestly, a Battle Royale Halo thing might have been a pretty good, might have been it. Like, if you go hog wild with that, like, you might have had something, but... dropping out of the Pelican drop ships, like landing in the shields or something, like that would have been pretty awesome.
Like they should have been like, we don't comment on rumors and speculation or whatever.
Although you say, if they're lying about it and that is the surprise, and they just don't want you to think it's coming.
Yeah, and that would be effective if it is a battle royale. If there's a battle royale mode and they're showing it at the Game Awards, I could absolutely see where they'd be like, oh crap. and immediately just go on Twitter and be like, "That's a lie. That's a lie.
That's not true. That's not happening."
Yeah,
something like that.
In like 8
like
days.
like that would be an angle, maybe. Like show that it's actually awesome. It's completely hectic and chaotic and crazy, and it looks awesome. And there's jetpacks and ships and flying things and warthogs and tanks and everything's destructive and it's all blowing up and and then they're like, okay, it's a battle royale. We're releasing it in modules. This is up right now.
Yeah, that would be groundbreaking.
Except that's the same day Cyberpunk comes out, and they're not going to be that stupid. So,
or they could say like tomorrow, or
like next month, or like
though, if it's not
make
now.
it happen soonish.
Yeah.
You know, like something where like even though your campaign's not be ready till like August or September, but you can play this in January or something.
Yeah,
like
and maybe if you play this when the campaign launches, you start with like this armor. Or
you'll get extra stuff, or in multiplayer, you'll get like special banners or whatever,
and
armor pieces.
You know what? It could absolutely. What we just outlined could turn around public sentiment on Halo Infinite.
Yeah, especially if it's like a thing. It's like, look, we're not trying. No, it won't. Especially if I were doing that and it was ready, I'd do something like that, and I'd be like, you can play right now, and it's free. Right. Because, like I said, the multiplayer they're not going to charge for the multiplayer.
Anyway. Yeah, it's be free.
Or it's free to play in like January, February, but if you have Game Pass, it's there right now.
Yeah. And right now they're doing like a crazy deal on Game Pass where if you haven't signed up, you can get it for like Ultimate for $1 for 3 months.
Yeah. I don't believe any of that's actually going to happen, but like that would be yeah. But you asked me like, well, how do you turn it around? I'm telling you that's kind of the way you could do it.
Yeah. So I don't see anything happening at the Game Awards for Halo Infinite that's going to drastically alter the pitch of the sentiment.
Yeah, you would need to drop a nuke from orbit, really.
Much. What could? I mean, I think if you showed campaign footage that looked like it was running on a next-gen console, a Generation 9 console, and it looked good and fun, I think that's
good and fun. Also, and something, tease me with something lore-driven or something that feels interesting, something that, makes me care about the story for the first time in 3 games, you know? What? Tell me why I'm supposed to care, because 4 and 5 didn't make me care about anything.
Yeah.
So give me a hook for 6 that and for Infinite that makes me want to come back into this universe and care what happens to Master Chief and Cortana and whatever's he's looking for Cortana obviously, but make me care about this universe again, because nothing in that
dies or you think he's dead. It changes everything, and I think a big part of the reason Halo has kind of lost a lot of its luster is it's almost like a case of crying wolf. And look, it happens with almost every franchise when you get into the 5th installment, the 6th installment. It happens with TV shows and films where you threaten the death of a main character or a main character dies, and then you bring him back or her back somehow or some way. It feels cheap, and I feel like I'm being manipulated a little bit by whoever created that piece of art. And this has happened with Halo, with Master Chief, with Cortana. What else is there, Matt? They can't.
Well, I don't agree with any of that. No, I don't agree with any of that, because I think not at all. I don't. The character death is not the only way to tell a story. And it's not the only way to have high stakes.
No, that's not what I said. My point was, once you do that, nothing else is going to make an impact. You've already killed somebody off.
I thought maybe you would be injured.
You want an adult, mature story in Halo. And that is never going to happen. They are never going to make a Halo game that has a nuanced plot and
Well, I don't know about adult and mature, but I'm just saying I'd like to see some stakes. And I don't mean
And my
food.
point was, what's bigger stakes than death? There isn't. And they
the bigger stakes than
death. I don't care about the plot in Halo anymore.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get at, and what you don't seem to understand is that of course there's more stakes than death. The stakes of the survival of the planet Earth, which was the point at the beginning of 3.
There's no bigger stakes than death. So any stake other than death is.
Well, it doesn't have to be Master Chief's death. It doesn't have to be Master Chief's death.
Cortana,
or Cortana's death. Can Cortana even die? She's an AI.
Right. They did kill her, and then she came back.
And then she came back, and now she's rampant, or is she rampant? And can you even explain what's happened to Cortana in 4 and 5? Because I can't.
I don't care, and that's my point.
But the point is,
after they kill somebody off and they bring.
But no, that's not. No. That's not why you don't care. The reason you don't care is because they told the story badly. They could absolutely make you care about what happens to Cortana in 4 and 5, but they failed. That's the problem.
I think the problem is it's a franchise that isn't about telling an intricate emotional story. It's a meathead franchise about this dude that runs around in green armor and kills shit. And
I think that's what it's more or less become. But and certainly that's the only interesting part of 4 and 5, especially if you're more into the multiplayer. But I think if you go back to the original Bungie people and say that to them about 1 through 3, they will absolutely disagree with you.
Yeah, I mean, I would disagree with the first 2. But the third one, I thought that's when it kind of transcended the more thoughtful stuff that they had started with the franchise. And 3 is actually my favorite Halo ever. So don't think that I'm slagging it or anything.
I think 3 pulls it off more or less. I think
shifting across the span of that game.
Well, I think 3 is the closest they get to the balance of that. I don't know if they fully achieve it, but I think. I think Halo has always thought it was more deep than it is. One of the reasons that it sells that
up its ass.
One of the reasons it sells that effectively in 1 through 3 is Marty O'Donnell's music. Like if you take the music out of that, you lose almost all the dramatic gravitas of those first 3 games. I don't think anyone would argue like that opening shot of Halo 3 where you're watching him sort of come back in the atmosphere and Jennifer Hale's doing the monologue about, I got to pick who I wanted of all the Spartans and then you had that extra thing that no one else had, which was luck. Like, it's a great monologue, but the reason that scene works is because Marty O'Donnell is making that music make it work for you. And they lose that in 4 and 5 is because they got rid of him for some fucking reason. Like, I will never. Maybe they just didn't like him or whatever. But
it sounds like people just don't like working with him.
Yeah, but
that's really what I've kind of figured out after talking to a lot of people.
I think that's true, but there's with certain people in certain positions, you just I'm saying who cares? Like
I agree.
With certain creative people, you put up with the bullshit because but the results are so worth it. Yeah. Because no one who plays Halo 4 or whatever is going to care that you had a hard time dealing with Marty on a daily basis, but they are going to care that the fucking music sucks. So I think you are right in the sense that because of the poor storytelling of 4 and 5, they are starting a mile behind the starting line on this game in the campaign. You don't have to just make me care again. 4 had to make me care after 3 because as much as I have issues with certain things about 1 through, because it's over. Because the story, a similar thing to Mass Effect, the story was over. You could have just let Master Chief float in space in hibernation at the end of 3, and 4 could have been about someone, kind of like 5 was. 5 was about a different Spartan. You could have brought Master Chief back at a key moment. Maybe you didn't even play as him, but he was like the thing you had to find.
Like some big battle or whatever.
Yeah, you could totally make Master Chief the MacGuffin. And even if you don't care one way or the other whether Master Chief's going to survive or not, because he's going to survive, he's Master Chief. But I am interested in the idea that we got to find him. Got to look for, search for Spock sort of stuff. You got to find this character we care about. That's a compelling idea. And 5 almost had that, but instead you also played as him and you were trying to accomplish a thing that was kind of makes sense for him to do because he cares about Cortana. And instead, you're also playing this other guy who's trying to stop him, who either doesn't understand the situation or doesn't care about the situation. And that is not an interesting, dramatic conflict, really. And it might be an interesting, dramatic conflict with a villain, but not an interesting, dramatic conflict. It's not interesting when I know more than both characters. And the problem is basically that the two characters will not fucking talk to each other.
Yeah.
It's a misunderstanding is a way to have a scene of conflict happen. For example, when Iron Man fights Thor in Avengers, but that's not the whole movie. That can't be the whole thing. Yeah. And that was the whole story of Halo 5 was these people just didn't quite understand what the other was after. Yeah. So 6 needs, if you're going to obviously you're going to focus on Master Chief. There has to be a reason
Halo 5, I had completely forgotten about that plot, Matt, that it was Chief versus the fake Chief.
Right. Don't ask me to explain it any further.
Even really that's not
no, it doesn't matter.
The plot.
No, it doesn't. And don't ask me to explain it further because that's literally. I'm not even sure I got all that right. I know there was two sides, and
the point made was that I didn't even remember most of the stuff from the plot.
The only reason I even know that is because I got the Halo Mythos book a few months ago and read through it, and it's funny because this is another example of how this story, a good story tends to boil down to a pretty tight synopsis. Great stories are generally not complicated at their core. Yeah. And the Halo 1 through 3 section is 6 pages. The Halo 4 and 5 section is 2 chapters. Like, because it's just convoluted plot.
Explain it and rationalize.
Right. Because there's no story. It's just plot.
It's just
plot and story are not the same thing. Story is what something's about. Plot is what happens in the story. Right. And like video games can get bogged down in just plot. And at a certain point, you're like, well, what was it about? Like, and nobody has anything to say.
The video games are that way.
Oh yeah, storytelling. It's like, and there's a lot of video games get by on that because I think there's a lot of people who play video games don't have a lot of, let's say, experience with storytelling outside the medium. Yeah. Especially the younger people. And you see, I see constantly. I've seen a lot in response to a lot of the nominations for Game of the Year stuff. I see a lot of people saying that 13 Sentinels Vanillaware game should have been nominated, and it got slighted because the best story all generation and and I played about half of that game, and that game is the most generic anime shit I could possibly like. Look, it's got a lot of allusions to other like science fiction, like great science fiction. It mentions H.G. Wells constantly and Orson Scott Card and all. It mentions all this. There's almost a Ready Player One who's who of all these other great science fiction works, and it's using concepts from all those things. But every single work it references is better than it.
Vanillaware is the new treasure, Matt.
It seems to be to some degree, but it's just got this element.
Freaks out over.
But it's just got this element of like, if you think that's great, wait till you read a book. Yeah. It's like and Halo 6, like I know it's Halo Infinite, but it's Halo 6.
It is.
I can't conceive of what it would have to do narratively to pull me back in. Like, I just don't know. Like, if you came to me and said, hey, we're 343, we want you to come with us and work with us to figure out what story Halo Infinite should have to get people back on board, I would not take that job.
You have to hire someone else.
I would be like, no, I'm not putting myself on that firing line. No, thank you.
He's a savior, though, if you save the franchise.
No, I am not finishing that fight. I am not doing that.
All right, that's a perfect way to end that topic. I think both of us would agree. We're probably not seeing Halo Infinite until the end of the year next year.
It feels
like the campaign, I think.
Yeah, I mean, God, it almost feels optimistic at this point.
Multiplayer beta March-ish.
Yeah.
Multiplayer launches maybe 2 or 3 months after that, and then campaign Q4.
Yeah, it feels like multiplayer full 1.0 multiplayer would probably be around what would have been E3. Yeah. Something like that.
Yep. With the beta.
If it were not, the tail end of the plague year, it feels like you would probably play the final multiplayer at E3. Yeah. And it would go live like a week or two later.
Yeah. Yep. So we'll see. But that's the latest on Halo Infinite. I know for a lot of you guys who bought Xbox Series X, you guys are waiting on this game. You may be waiting for a little while longer. All right, our last topic for episode 239 is the biggest game of the week and one of the bigger games released in the last couple of months. And that is Immortals Fenyx Rising. I had to check the title of the game to make sure I got it right because I have called this game a billion different things. It is the most generic name for a video game.
It is not a name that sticks in the brain.
No. It was originally called Gods and Monsters, which stuck in my brain just fine.
It's a much better title, but Monster Energy Drink, see indeed them, because apparently Monster Energy Drink owns the word monster? Like, I don't see. I think you would have won that lawsuit, but I just feel they didn't want to have a lawsuit over it.
Well, I'll say this. After playing the game, I think that they changed it because monsters is a bit of a misnomer in this game. It should be called Gods and Monster because you fight like the same enemies over and over and over again. But anyway, this game was originally called Gods and Monsters. It is an open world, I guess I would call it an action RPG. There are skill trees, and you learn new abilities, and you get new gear, and it's not like a loot-driven game so much, though. You're not like picking up like 8,000 helmets and 20,000 swords. It's not like there's stuff that's dropped every time you defeat an enemy. You have to constantly sort through it and sell it. That's not really what this game is.
I can definitely see that it's built on top of like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, though. Like there's a lot of similarities to sort of the character interface. They just took away all the loot. Like same like Valhalla, they're like, okay, you only get one of this kind of axe. We're not going to give you 4,000 bearded axes that you have to like break down and sell all the time.
Yeah, they've simplified it a lot, and because a big part of the game is this game is based loosely on Greek mythology. It is a comedic game. It tries to be funny from the beginning until the end. And I will say, I have not finished the game yet. I've played about 20 hours. I think I'm not too far away. I don't think this game is as big as most Assassin's Creed games, but because it is based on Greek mythology, loosely, like when you first start the game, you're basically collecting like all the items of the Greek gods. So you get like your bow and your sword, and they're all attached to some famous Greek deity that you've probably heard about in the past.
And we should also explain. I have not played this yet.
Okay.
Because it's not out yet.
Yep.
So.
And I've been playing it for a week. I got it from Ubisoft quite a while ago, so I've had a good chance to really dive into it.
Yeah, I think it goes live in like 2 hours.
Yeah.
So.
And the good news is you're going to hear this when the game is for sale. You're going to get my opinion on the game the same day it goes up for sale for you guys. So if you're sitting on the fence, you're wondering about this game, hopefully this helps. So when you first start the game, you're kind of collecting all your items. And it doubles as like the training section for the game. So they give you your first sword, and then they show you how to use your sword. And then they give you your wings, and then they teach you how to use your wings to glide. And then eventually you get the upgrade to your wings that allows you to do more than just double jump and actually glide from one thing to another. And it slowly builds up. And then the game starts proper. The epilogue for this is a good 2 hours long, something like that, before it finally puts up the game's logo on the screen and starts the game proper. Now, Matt is right. The interface, the UI and stuff like that, and kind of the structure on how you build out your character and how items are handled are very much like Assassin's Creed. And it's an open world game.
It is the same. It's the same team as Odyssey.
Yeah.
But it basically came out of when they were doing the research for all the mythology for the DLC stuff. Yeah. They were like, wouldn't it be fun if we could go a little more, straightforward with it and have fun with it? And so that's where this game apparently came from. Also from somebody clearly played Breath of the Wild.
Yes. Well, that's what I'm getting to. So it does have elements of Ubisoft's other open world games, but it is really different. And when I say different, it's different in pretty much all the same ways that Breath of the Wild is different than other open world games. So there is a huge open world, just like Breath of the Wild, and there are tons of locations to discover and things like that. But most of the levels, so to speak, are rifts. They're these holes in the ground that you jump into. And they're basically the same as the temples from Breath of the Wild. You go inside. Most of the temples in this game are puzzle-driven. There's really hardly any combat inside the temples, and what you're doing is you're picking up steel boxes using your stasis ability, and you're placing them on switches, and then that switch opens up a new walkway that gets you to another platform where there's a bunch of lasers that you have to align to open up another pathway that gets you to another.
the famous lasers of Greek mythology. Yeah, exactly. We remember those.
Yeah, well, it's light. It's like reflecting light or whatever. But that's the type of stuff that you're doing in this game on the regular. Now,
so are those as small as the temples, one puzzle at a time, or are they bigger?
They're not huge, but they are bigger. I'm trying to think of something that I can compare it to that give you a frame of reference.
I keep thinking, I don't know if this is valid, but when I see this game, I keep thinking about Darksiders 2. Where you kind of run around this big open world, and then you get to these sort of little dungeon things that are rolling balls into slots, and
kind of the same. Yeah, I'd agree with that. And then the combat happens in the open world, and there are missions out in the open world where they'll say, go to this location and kill this creature or whatever, and that tends to be where the combat takes place. But overall, this game is much more of a puzzle platformer type game than it is an open world action RPG that's driven by combat. And the combat isn't bad. It has all the tools that you need. It has a parry, it has a dodge, and there are certain enemies that have attacks that you can't parry or you can't dodge, and there's a rock, paper, scissors thing that gets involved with all that stuff. You have a sword and you have a bow, and you can mix up combos with those. The combat itself, it feels okay. I feel a little detached from what's happening on the screen, to be perfectly honest with you. My biggest complaint about it, really, though, is that it doesn't evolve quickly enough. Over time, you do get new abilities and new attacks and things like that, but it takes far too long for them to kind of layer on the new stuff. So you'll get in a position where you have X number of abilities, and you'll use those abilities for a good while before you get an upgrade. So the upgrades are slow. The pace of the game overall is slow. It's just not one of those games where you have this big epic moment, and then you see a cutscene, and then it shoves you on to this next epic moment. There are peaks and valleys in this game, and generally I like that in video games, and I do like it in this one. Unfortunately, the valleys in this game are generally tied to moving the story forward in some way. And I've read a couple reviews about this game, and look, humor is subjective. It's like in last week's episode, we talked about how music is subjective. Matt likes the music in Breath of the Wild. I don't. There's certain things in life that one person can view one way and another person can view another way, and that's totally fine. And humor is one of those things. And me personally, I did not find this game funny at all. I did not chuckle at anything. There's two Greek gods that are basically narrating the game going back and forth. You're basically the last hope to save them. And one believes you're going to be able to do it, and the other one doesn't believe in you at all. And so there's this narration going on between the two of them the whole game long, where one is always disparaging you, making fun of you. The other one is always trying to lift you up and tell you that you're doing a great job and you're going to complete the mission and blah, blah, blah. None of it I found funny. It also has things that I've complained about in other games before, where it has like colloquialisms that are things that we say now that are being said in this game that's supposed to be taking place in Greek mythology. Just words that we use slang in pop culture today that they're saying in the script of this game. And I don't know, maybe at the end there's some kind of a weird twist where actually somebody lives in the present day. I have not finished the game. I don't know. But if there isn't something like that, it sucks.
You mean the gods are saying that?
Yes,
Or like
yeah, they're using words that would never be used by them.
Well, they're gods. They may exist outside of time.
You're
so
right.
They would be able to
could maybe take a peek into the future. It's off-putting to me.
I mean, it's kind of. I think that also comes out of sort of the pedigree of kind of the CW thing. Supernatural does that a little bit with like Death and the Angels and things. Like it's just like having like classical mythological figures use modern slang is almost a standard shortcut to like look how wacky we are now. Yeah. So yeah, you either like that or you don't. I like it when it's done well. I don't know how I feel about this. I've only had a little bit of exposure to the narration you're talking about. In the so the trailers have it, and stuff,
and it's well written.
But it's fun, and it makes it's Prometheus and Zeus, as I recall, and that makes sense. Like Prometheus would be kind of a cheerleader. Prometheus has always been a cheerleader of humanity. That's why he brought us fire, and nobody liked him for that at Olympus. And Zeus sort of thinking like we're idiots is also sort of standard. So that works. That's in character.
Zeus is like he's a human. He's not a god. And
yeah, I can see how that would get old. I mean, it doesn't sound like it's any Bastion. If there's anyone that does like good kind of lighthearted narration properly, it's Supergiant. And everyone else has to kind of catch up to that. And I don't know.
There aren't many games that do this. That has like a narrator that kind of just goes along with the entire game, kind of making comments about what's happening. So it's not something that's done very often, and it is done. Look, the writing is good, the voice work is good. It's just it tries to be funny, and all the jokes fall really flat. And
is your character silent?
No, he talks.
No, Fenyx talks.
Yeah, and so when you start the game, you have a very rudimentary character customization. There's like 4 faces to choose from and like 5 haircuts. And you can choose to play as either a male or a female character. And yes, your character is voiced a lot. And the voice is really annoying, and he's kind of like this whiny... I don't like the visuals in this game for the most part. Even though, I will say this, now that I've played it, it doesn't look like Breath of the Wild all that much to me. The more I played it, the less it looked like Breath of the Wild.
I think the revamp they did took it away from that. Yeah, I think the early trailers look way more like Breath of the Wild.
And I'll say this, I would rather have that. I would rather have it look like Breath of the Wild than what it looks like now. This game does not look good in a lot of cases. Particularly, like a lot of the cinematics, the character models are really simple, and that could be a style that they went for. But the character models are really simple. The world is very simple. It's not littered with a lot of detail. So a lot of times, the backgrounds for cinematics will just be like a ground texture in a tree. Like, Here's what I would say about this game. Having played a good bit of it at this point, it feels like a game that Ubisoft worked on for like a year and a half instead of like 3 years. Like what Matt said earlier about, hey, we were working on Odyssey and we got the idea for this other. I believe that 1,000,000% because that's what this game is like. It's like they had this other idea for a Creed game, but it wouldn't really fit into Assassin's Creed. And they're like, well, what do we fit it into? Well, let's create this new universe. It feels like everything is just kind of there because it needs to be there, not because it should be there. Like the gods and the plot and like.
I had a thing where I read in some of the reviews where that was the thing that kind of caught my attention the most was like where people would say like the different areas in the game are sort of each ruled by a god. So like there's like Aphrodite has her area and Ares has his area and it's more war stuff and whatever. And they're saying like because those are kind of areas made of whole cloth to be themed around a particular god. One of the shortcomings is sort of the like nothing feels like a real world, nothing feels like it's lived in, everything feels like it's just sort of there to fulfill a theme, as opposed to sort of the feeling of running around Hyrule, where like you'd find places that felt like a natural location. Would you agree with that?
Either that you have like these rifts that are just literally holes in the ground that warp you to some other reality. I mean, there are allusions to alternate realities and timelines and all that kind of crap, but your base point is absolutely right. This game feels like a collection of ideas that were snapped together instead of a concept that was cohesive that they managed to flesh out through game development. It's a quality game. I haven't had any bugs or issues like that, and that's actually for a Ubisoft game is pretty rare.
Yeah, I was gonna say like given the last two they put out, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and the voice acting is great, the writing is good, the graphics engine is fine, and the visuals are okay. It's just missing any sort of a spark. I found myself forcing myself to play this game instead of wanting to play it, I guess. Like, I was like, I need to play this game for GameFace, but I would rather keep playing Valhalla, or I would rather keep playing Miles Morales. I wouldn't go so as far as to say I'd rather play Demon's Souls, but but I have all these other games that
I don't know. You don't have Godfall, so.
But I have these other games that are sitting there that I haven't completed that I would rather play instead of playing this. I played it because I had to
I'm pretty excited about this game. I really like how it looks, but I haven't stared at it for 20 hours like you have, so that might change. I really like the idea.
Simple. Like all the textures are really flat. Like the character models, like the hair doesn't like move. Like it feels like a cheap, quick and dirty game that Ubisoft cranked out, and it did.
Are you playing it on PS5?
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is one game where I downloaded it first on the PS5, so I'm not playing the PS4 version. But look, it does look crisp and clear, and the draw distance you can see to infinity.
I got it. I mean, that seems kind of. I always felt kind of key to that. Especially after the relaunch, like all the trailers show, like you can see the whole world pretty much from any vantage point. Yep. I have it on Xbox, so I guess we can. Briefly compare notes next week.
For sure, yeah. And look, I'm not trying to scare anybody off, but I would say that if you're hoping that this is Assassin's Creed set in Greek mythology, no, it's not. It is.
It sounds like you're more of in a be prepared mode.
Yeah, this is Breath of the Wild set in Greek mythology, to be totally honest with you, and it doesn't look as much like it as it did whenever we first saw the game. But it really feels like it and plays like it. There's way more plot in this, though. Way more exposition, way more voice acting, way more cinematics.
There's more plot in my grocery store runs than there is in Breath of the Wild, if we're being honest.
And I would say that this game probably goes overboard. Like, I think it beats you over the head with it so much that I started to not like it. So you have one extreme with Breath of the Wild where it doesn't tell you enough. Then you have this one where it tells you too much.
Oh, there's definitely you can hit a point where it's like, just shut up, like just let me play. And Ubisoft games to me do that semi-regularly. Like there's this one. I'm in that point with Valhalla.
Particularly interesting.
Valhalla has that problem. Everyone's because like you have those arcs for each area. Yeah. And like a couple times I've run into an area arc where I'm just like, I don't care about any of this.
I told you that when we first talked about Valhalla. I'm sitting there watching cinematics. I'm like, I don't care about anything you're saying. Nothing.
It's like, can we just get through this so I can stab who I got to stab and we can move on?
Skip. Yeah. And this game is worse. Here's what I would say. It's an open world Ubisoft game for kids. That's really what it is. Kids, I think, will love this game. They'll love the goofy writing. They'll love the characters and how goofy they act, and they won't care that some stuff doesn't make sense. Or I think this is Ubisoft's like gateway game for kids. I think Ubisoft may have developed this game specifically to get kids into open world games, their open world games, and as they get older and they graduate to things like Assassin's Creed and Watch Dogs. And I think for kids, I think this is a great game. It's very simple. It's easy to follow. There's always waypoints showing you where to go, and they're like gigantic. There's never getting lost. The puzzles in the game...
We'll also explain why they crammed the thing on the Switch.
Yeah. Look, it does explain it. They ease you into the puzzles. In fact, the first 5 hours of this game are almost insultingly easy. Like, there was a couple points where I was like, no, it can't be that simple. And like, I walked away and tried to do something else and came back and was like, no, it really is that freaking simple. So they ease you into it, and I do think they do a good enough job of building the concepts, the puzzle concepts, so that when it does get more difficult later on, even kids, I think, will be able to handle it. So to me, I think this is like my first Ubisoft open world game. I think a lot of adults may be put off by it, and if you're an adult and you're trying to decide between this or Valhalla, or even, in all honesty, Watch Dogs Legion, I would choose either of those games over this one.
Or just wait a week and play Cyberpunk.
Yeah. That's really the smart move. That's really what you should do, is forget all those games and buy Cyberpunk on December 10th. But look, this to me is a good game to buy your kid for Christmas. Or if you have nieces and nephews in the family you need to buy for, and you're willing to splurge on them a little bit. I don't spend usually that much on each of my nieces and nephews, but maybe you do. This is a great game for them. And if you
I only have 2, so.
Yeah, I have a lot. I have like 12 nieces and nephews at this point. But if you're looking like for a game that could get somebody young into gaming, that could blossom into them becoming a gamer like you are, and you want to have that connection with someone in your family, I think this is a great game to buy. I think if you're looking to be blown away, or maybe even you're seeking a different angle on what Ubisoft has traditionally done, I think you'll feel the game is that if you haven't played Breath of the Wild. But if you have played Breath of the Wild, you're just going to feel like this is a mashup of that and Ubisoft's other stuff. It is a pretty big game. Like, I'm 20-some hours into it. I'm probably, based upon kind of looking at the map and some of the stuff that Matt mentioned earlier about how the game is kind of structured, I feel like I'm about 70% of the way through. It's not going to be as big as, like, Valhalla or even Watch Dogs. But you're still going to get your money's worth and then some from this.
Yeah, I'm okay with not as big as Valhalla.
Yeah. And if you have a kid, they'll actually might be able to finish the game and get a sense of accomplishment out of it instead of just beating their head against a wall for 70 hours straight.
That is one of the things about playing. I'm still on Valhalla, although I've also sort of moved over to. I played Fallen Order again, and I'm playing KOTOR. But like more and more on Valhalla, I feel like I'm just moving forward by inches. Like, it just feels like I don't make enough progress in a session.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I share that sentiment.
Yeah. But I'm like 40 hours in now, so I'm really starting to feel that way in a way that I didn't when we talked about before because I hadn't played it as much.
Well, it's interesting because now that you have played it as much as me or close to as much as I have, your opinion is starting to come around to match mine. Mm-hmm. It's funny. You've mentioned 2 things now talking about it that I talked about when we first discussed it that you hadn't played enough to kind of know. And now you're saying I'm seeing the same thing. So
yeah, and I feel like eventually I will go back to, like, I can see after like playing through Cyberpunk, going back to Valhalla, and everything feels a little more fresh. Yeah, but everything feels a little more like, oh, okay, yeah, I remember this is a little less, involved, and I'm cool with that. But like, just the same thing, I'm so tired of looking at thatched roofs. It's just like so many long houses.
And again, I also said that too. I'm like, because it's in this one territory, the environment starts to get really boring.
Yeah, and I'm starting to like get far enough north that like I'm getting to kind of the snowy areas more, and like but they really leave you in that middle England area for like 40 hours, and you're just like, oh my god, if I have to look at one more deer.
I know.
And it becomes a problem with like the upgrading where it's just like I need this thing from these creatures, and I'm too low level to go find a reindeer. Like it's weird.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll talk about this game again next week after Matt has had a chance to play it, and I'll be looking forward to hear his impressions of the game. But just wanted to give you guys at least a good rough overview from the first 20-ish hours to know whether you want to pick it up today, because you guys are watching this the next day as it's the archive. So I think you probably have a good idea. I will say this, if you're a big fan of Breath of the Wild, buy it. I think you're going to like it. It has a lot of the same elements as far as like the stamina and the climbing and the gliding and the swimming and the running. All of it is governed by stamina, which I freaking hate. I know some of you guys love it, and if you do, you're going to love this freaking game. So if you like Breath of the Wild...
If you love arbitrary limits on what you can do at one time, it's a festival out there.
It is. It absolutely is. So I think you at least have a good rough idea of what the game is. We'll get into some more nitty-gritty details for next week's episode when Matt has had a chance to play it as well. And with that, it's time to get on with our Q&A. And while the show isn't live today, you guys were great as usual. You responded to our tweet and asked us questions for the end of the show. You also went to the official thread, the official GameFace thread on SIFTD.net and asked some questions there. So we have plenty of great questions. Let's get to the first one. This one comes from Jay Lynn. And his question is, I'm really interested in the debate you had with Pactor regarding Epic and Apple. Do you think you'll ever release that as a special outtake episode? Would you also include all the crazy things he says, but you edit out? Thanks for all the hard work. No, I will not do that. I would definitely not do that. And if I were to do that, there would never be another episode of Pactor Factor. So, no, that is definitely not going to happen. The funny thing, too, is that a lot of times Pactor doesn't even tell me to, like, cut stuff out that I know I should cut out. And then sometimes he'll have an epiphany, like 2 days later, and he'll text me or he'll call me, and he'll remember some random thing he said. And we record for, like, 3 hours. And he'll remember some random thing he said or some way that he said it. And he'll be like, I'm not sure that was okay. Can you go and check that and make sure? Like, and it'll be exactly where he said it was. He's like, probably like 2 hours and like 10 minutes. And I'll go and right there it'll be. It's so crazy. But no, I'm not. The stuff that Pactor and I say to each other in private, it's private. It's between he and I. We have, like, while we're recording the show, we hold a conversation, like a dialogue, a back and forth. Like, he finishes an episode, and we'll just strike back up the dialogue. There's stuff in there that I say that I don't want out there as well. So, no, that stuff is going to remain.
And believe me, there's plenty of stuff that passes between on-camera talent and off-camera people in every TV show that you never get to hear, and there's a good reason for that.
Yep. And that happens here, too. So, just leave it at that. Joaquim Dragoon. What do you think of the new Fortnite season? Should more games as a service follow this model? Why is it so successful for Fortnite? Well, I mean, the new season is kind of like a mashup of like a bunch of different stuff. It's like got Galactus in it, but then it's also got like Sparta and like just.
Well, they finished Galactus. They beat Galactus, and the new one I've seen that the Mandalorian's in it.
Mandalorian, that's right.
Look, you could do worse with your live service game than to constantly put the hottest new nerd-related stuff in it.
Yeah.
I'm sure it works. And the other thing is, like, it all looks pretty good. Like,
yeah, they do.
The costumes look good. They do a really good job with it. Like, it's, and also, I mean, I don't play Fortnite, but I see the videos, I see the stuff that comes up on SIFTD when they do the updates on things like that. I think it's really cool that that's one of the only places in the world you can see Marvel and DC characters together in the same game.
Yeah, I'm surprised that it's happened.
Yeah, that's pretty nice. You've got Iron Man and Batman right there next to each other in a costume thing. I mean, that's cool. I'm into it.
Yeah, I think they're doing a great job with Fortnite.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like Epic, what it's doing as a company recently, but
right, but the people making the Fortnite stuff are not those people, so I'm happy to support that.
There's no one better. That's why Fortnite is what it is. So I think they're doing a great job.
Yeah, and they built that game out to be able to handle all that. That's the thing is people's like, how come Apex Legends doesn't do stuff because Apex Legends can't do that. You think they could put Galactus in that thing? No, probably not. I'm not without some serious work. But every time
it's so big that every pop culture, whatever,
and they all want to be part of it.
They want to be in it. Where a lot of games have to ask. These companies are coming to Epic. How do we get in Fortnite? It's an anomaly. It's a phenomenon.
Yeah, I mean that's also part of the seeing the Marvel and DC characters like in the same guy. Like that's how powerful and ubiquitous this game is. That Marvel and DC don't even care.
They're like whatever.
That they're going to be because normally they'd be like we don't want to be seen in the same side by side situation as these other characters. And on this thing, there's like no, just whatever. Like we got to be part of it, and so they are.
Yep. Next question from Zed Saber. What's up, Zed Saber? Hope you're doing good, man. Have you seen the video of older console emulation on the Xbox Series S? Do you think this feature will draw more people into buying the console? So he's referring to, we curated a video this week from the Modern Vintage Gamer where he showed off like PS2 emulation running on Xbox Series S. But to answer your question, no, emulation is never going to move the needle.
Not enough people care.
I know a lot of people will say that like the PSP only stayed alive because of homebrew, or the Vita only stayed alive.
Well, except it didn't, did it?
Right, but what is alive? Alive means that you still played it. It doesn't mean that anyone was buying it or buying games for it.
No.
Alive means that you still used it. That's it.
And also, like, there's a non-zero chance that Microsoft is going to shut that down pretty quick. You know, like I think Microsoft is thrilled that people found a way to run RetroArch on the Xbox Series S. Like that's.
Do you think this feature will draw more people into buying the console?
No, of course not.
I know about it. Yeah.
No, well, and also you can just put it on your computer. Yeah. You can't need to buy a $300 $500 game console to do that. You can just put it on your computer. Like it's silly. Yeah. Like it's. I mean, it's cool that you can do that, I guess, but it's like.
Yeah, if you own one and you want to jailbreak it, go for it.
I mean, you can just go get a Raspberry Pi and stick it in something if you want to do that.
Right.
Like
only play games you paid for.
Yeah.
Swarfier, why doesn't PS5 support Bluetooth headphones? Could that change?
Good question. I don't know.
Really idiotic. I wasn't even aware of it. I didn't even know that was the case. I have not used headphones with my PS5 yet, now that I think about it.
Neither have I, but I wouldn't have guessed that.
My guess is Sony's proprietary headset probably is a Bluetooth.
Yeah.
I mean, just taking a wild guess at it, I think that's probably what it is. They want you to buy their headset.
Yeah, or they want you to talk through the stupid controller.
Yeah, which I didn't even realize was like turned on by default. Like I was playing.
Yeah, you got to turn that off by accident.
I don't even talk trash when I'm playing Call of Duty. I only say something if like I find someone being like a coward or something like that. And I said effing coward. And the guy, I didn't even know the mic was on, and the guy was like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "Whoa!" I was like, "You ran away and got me killed. It was 2-on-1, and I died because you ran away." But anyway, yeah, you're right. Like, if you get a PS5, don't forget the microphone is in the controller and it's on by default.
Yeah, you got to press the thing underneath the PlayStation button, and it like a little yellow light that says it's off.
Yeah.
So
like Matt and I always say, if something happens and you don't know why it happens, it's always because of money. So why doesn't the PS5 support Bluetooth headphones? Money.
Probably.
Next up.
I bet they will start supporting it when Sony puts a pair out.
Yep, exactly.
How about that?
Have a Bluetooth headset. They'll have to. Next is a question from actually a mutual friend of Matt and I's, and he used to be my assistant on XPlay, Rob Manuel, who is at 8BitWiz on Twitter. He asks, what do you see as the future of games media as more companies speak directly with their consumers, outlets shrink, and newcomers fail to find footing in video or streaming platforms?
I know what the publishers want. They want, and they've talked about this multiple times, and I've been approached a couple times for things like this. They want to have, like, AAA publishers want to have their own sort of in-house, quote-unquote, media centers, like their own, like, kind of media teams that function like a gaming press outlet, but are actually fully controlled by the publisher. So you'd have like a Ubisoft, sort of like the Treehouse.
Well, Ubisoft did have that. They did
have that. It didn't last too long.
They had to clean it out because they were all the people who were sexually harassed.
Right. That was also part of that problem. So you got to screen people a little better.
Yeah.
But I think the movement, at least in their heads right now, I don't know if it'll be successful. But the idea in the heads right now of the biz dev world seems to be sort of emulating the Nintendo Treehouse model.
Yeah, I mean, that's been going on for a while. It started with community managers when they started like hiring fans to like manage their social media and stuff like that. And it has just grown into, and Matt's right, like a lot of ex-games journalists, this is the job that they have now, is they work as a press person internally. Matt Casamassina, when he left IGN, everyone's like, where did he went to Apple, where he was Apple's in-house game reviewer, basically. And that's what he did.
He like basically went and found stuff that was worth putting on the Apple Store.
Yep.
Like that was his job, was to go find content.
And a lot of journalists.
Pretty good work if you can get it, kids.
There aren't a lot of jobs like that, though.
No.
And
you
want
to see
another? Right, though.
Yeah.
Outlets are shrinking. We just talked about the adpocalypse here on GameFace a few weeks ago. It's not gotten any better. In fact, it's gotten way worse. So outlets are going to shrink. They're going to get smaller. But where does games media go? You're probably right, Matt. It probably is just going to keep shifting more towards and that's when it gets to the point where there's nobody that you can trust. I think as far as like people you can trust, where are you going to be able to find them? You're going to find them where you're finding them right now, on Patreon, on YouTube. IGN will probably be around until I die.
Yeah. IGN is pretty bulletproof just because of how big they are and how many. IGN has managed to keep their editorial separate from their kind of paid content world. So like the twain don't really cross there.
I just think they're too big to go away.
A little bit. I mean, nothing's too big to go away, but IGN seems to have pretty much figured it out.
Weeks, a month, you would have to do something monumentally stupid for that site to go away.
If there's one thing we know in the game world, never say never.
Well, there is that old saying.
Probably not.
I don't subscribe to this, but there is that old saying that fanboys always use: you can't spell ignorant without IGN.
Well, they're still here, aren't they?
They are, exactly. And I think they're going to stay here. Like, I think they will be here forever. The other guys, even GameSpot, I am not confident in at all.
Yeah, and some of that just has nothing to do with their performance or behavior. It's entirely how the ad stuff works and how the corporate mega structures that own them decide to arbitrarily shut down or keep.
Yeah, I mean, they're basically owned by a hedge fund now. GameSpot is like hedge funds don't care about artistry.
Like you want to look. You look forward far enough, like the most, the last remaining high-profile independent game journalist might be Keeley. Yeah, which is, want to talk about dystopian.
Or us. I mean, we're independent. We don't take any money from video game publishers. We don't take a penny. I've never taken a penny from a video game company ever on SIFTD. So you're going to be able to find stuff, but you're also going to have to find people like me who are willing to stick it out, because a lot of people would have quit already, believe me. A lot of people would have quit many times over. But you need someone dedicated who thinks that this is what they want to do. Like, I didn't go, to work at GameSpot or G4 or Game Trailers to get a job working for publishers. This is what I want to do. And you're going to need people like that are going to help carry this forward. It's not going to be the people who are just like, it seems like a cool job. Maybe I'll find another cool job working there. Those people aren't going to last, and they're going to go away. And I think a lot of big publications...
or they're going to get more higher-paying jobs in other fields.
End up working in one of these media, working in-house for one of the publishers.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the people they want. So, and it makes sense. You want people who are irrationally overjoyed over products. So...
Yeah, and you've got... I mean, there's still... Every once in a while, someone tries the old model. I mean, like the return of G4 is going to be, certainly going to have that same thing of, like, not beholden to anyone, going to tell it how they think it is. So we'll see how long that lasts. Like, I'd like to think that there's a place for that. But
it's hard. It's easy to pander to people and know what they want. Just tell them what they want. And people are like, it's so funny. Like, I don't even know if people realize that they're being pandered to. One, I don't know if they care, too. I think some people are just like, sure, pander to me. That's what I want.
Well, I think you're back to your bubble thing
it is.
Again.
The conversation went full circle. Yep. And I wasn't going to say it, but you did it for me. So anyway, I think we took too long answering that, but it was a great question. Thanks, Rob. Hope you're doing well, man. Much love. Next up, from Biggs Villainous, pre-Cyberpunk Game of the Year. Any game that surprised you this year positively or negatively? I don't want to say that because that'll give away our Game of the Year runners up. So we won't answer the first part. But any game that surprised you this year positively or negatively, Matt?
I mean, I think isn't that also one of our categories, most pleasant surprise?
It is, actually. Try to pick your runner-up, maybe.
I don't know. But I think a pleasant surprise this year, I think Spiritfarer
Okay.
There were a lot of like Hades or like the indie stuff that popped out and Fall. You know, I mean, I've never played Fall Guys, so I don't know. But I think but Fall Guys is part of that same thing. Like those indie games that come out and you're like, and it just sort of like is exactly what you need right then.
Yep.
You know, and indie games do that more often and better than than AAA stuff tends to for me. I love AAA stuff, obviously, but like. Every once in a while, one of those indie games comes along that just like plugs the hole in my heart, and like Spiritfarer did that, Hades did that. You want to go back a couple of years, Forgotten Anne did that. Like that's the kind of stuff. Those are my favorite surprises every year. It's at least in this modern era of like kind of where indie games come from.
I already told you some of the games I was pleasantly surprised by, negatively surprised by. Watch Dogs Legion. That is the game that stands out the most to me. I thought it was going to be one thing, and it was something else.
Mm-hmm. I think negative surprise. You're probably still in Final Fantasy VII remake territory for me. Like, because I was sort of cautiously optimistic that like maybe this is what gets me like to get it about Final Fantasy VII, and it wasn't. Even just replaying Fallen Order this week. Because Fallen Order does the thing where Cal has to scoot through narrow passageways a fair amount of time to like wait to get the loading out of the way, right? But in Fallen Order, he's like hopping over stuff and lifting BD1 with him and like kind of doing stuff and ducking under things. There's some character to it. And like Final Fantasy VII, it's just Cloud rigid against a wall like a PS2 character slowly inching his way along a concrete block, and it's just death. Yep. Yeah, like I will.
Final Fantasy VII remake for you.
I will bang that drum until the end of the year. Believe you me, until they try to make me play 15 again.
Yep. Next from Arj Nike. I've got a PS5, but I also have a PS4 Pro. Is there any point in keeping my Pro anymore? No.
Only if you got PT on it.
That's it. That is the only reason. If you have PT and you downloaded it, that's it.
Yeah. Or you really want to play Robinson the Journey. It's one of the VR games that didn't work.
If you have PT, that's it.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And honestly, you want to talk about selling something for money? PS4 with PT on it.
Oh yeah. You put that on eBay. How much do you think you're gonna sell it for, Matt?
I don't know, but I guarantee you there are people who are nuts enough to pay an absurd premium for that incredibly mediocre demo. Yeah, I said it. Like, I don't know why people freak out. I think it's the Firefly syndrome, where like, look, season 1 of Firefly was pretty good. Like, it was all right. But most of the reason people freak out and will not let go of that fucking TV series is because season 3 of Firefly was probably going to be amazing. And like PT is the same way. It's like, it's kind of a fine little demo-y thing, cool. But I think people are mostly just hanging on to like how awesome they think the game would have been.
I saw some small fan sites reporting this week that Kojima is making Silent Hills.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, look, the
reputable site reported. I don't
know about that. I will tell you pretty confidently that Silent Hill will be back in some form or another. Well, yeah, but I don't know if Kojima's working on it, and I certainly don't. I mean, I don't know. Maybe we're doomed to Kojima games having Norman Reedus in them forever now, but I hope not.
Okay, last question from Raphael Michael, who did the art on our new shirts. After all this time spent with the new systems, what's your one biggest disappointment and biggest surprise in regards to each? You go first, Matt.
I'm a little disappointed at how loud the PS5 is. I don't have the coil whine or the fan problem or anything, but I can hear it. Like when sound in load screen, kind of like when things get quiet or I'm switching between stuff or whatever, I can hear the fan on the PS5. Not like I would call Sony and say there's something wrong with the system, but I can hear it. The Xbox Series X, I can't hear anything.
But put it's in the Series X, I hear that, the drive, but you're right. I hear nothing from it.
So I watched a Blu-ray movie on the Series X for the first time this week. Speed Racer, for those who are curious, which is awesome.
It is really good.
I put it in. I can hear it when it like loads in. You know, it's like okay, loading the thing. After that, starting the movie, nothing. Like,
well, mine was
absolutely silent.
It was an Xbox 360 disc or whatever.
So I probably had to read everything to install stuff and everything. Yeah, but like you can obviously hear it go kind of do that drive thing.
Right. Loaded the game.
You can hear the drive thing go, but like it was obviously it was reading the disc to play the movie the whole time, and it was absolutely silent. So amazing. I love that. So that would be my thing. Is like the PS5 is a little. I mean, it's quieter than my. It's quieter, I think, decibel wise, than my PS4 Pro. But something about the amplitude, the weight, the quality of the tone of the fan, I can hear it better. It might just be because it's taller. It might just be because it's higher up.
It could be, and it could be.
And it's bouncing off the wall. And I think that might be it.
Because I haven't heard my PS5, but I do have mine sitting horizontal. So
that could be it. Yeah. So that's my one thing on that one. The Xbox.
No games. There's nothing to play.
Yeah, I mean, other than the lineup.
You just asked, what's your biggest disappointment? For me, the Series X. I think for everyone, it's the lack of exclusive software.
Yeah, not a lot of new stuff to look forward to or to play right now. I mean, I'm playing most of the stuff I'm playing, like I said, is old. I played a lot of Star Wars games that I've already played before. Playing Valhalla, but I'm not going to give the Xbox credit for that. It's just the platform I happen to buy it on. Yeah. I guess it is the lineup when it comes down to it.
For me, PlayStation 5, biggest disappointment. I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, or maybe it was last week. The stand. As it turns out, you cannot, in fact, attach the stand when the PlayStation 5 is horizontal. It just has to sit on the stand. That
is weird. I thought it would like screw in the back somehow or something. That's
no
weird.
Way to do it. You only screw in the stand when the PS5 is vertical. So that is a huge, huge pet peeve for me. I have to move that thing around all the time. Even just setting it on my entertainment center, it's like the stand is so weird. So you put it into the stand, and then it's kind of like crooked. But you can't just move the stand and the console together because it goes, and it'll hop off the stand. Like, it's horrible. I have no idea why Sony decided to design it that way. It's a horrible idea. I realize most of you guys never move your console, but if you ever go to move your PS5, you're going to understand exactly what I'm talking about. Keep in mind, I have to move mine every day. And I think it's horrible design. I don't know why they did it that way. Biggest disappointment with Xbox, no software. Most pleasant surprise for Xbox. I guess the stock controller would be a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, the controller's good. I mean, my most pleasant surprise. My most pleasant surprise is still how quiet it is. Yeah. Like, I am amazed at how silent that thing is. It's ridiculous.
Stock controller is great. Most pleasant surprise for PlayStation 5. How much I've played it compared to my Xbox Series X. It's been on ever since I got it. I mean, that's a funny
thing.
Problems they have with standby, but
that's the funny thing is, like, so I do have mine turned off. I don't use standby, at least until I'm sure that issue's fixed. I didn't turn my PlayStation 5 on for like 4 days.
Wow.
I was playing Valhalla, which is on the Xbox. And I'd finished Miles Morales, so I was kind of done, and it was, I wasn't getting pulled back by Godfall. Sorry.
Definitely not.
But I think I turned it on to do the save transfer for Spider-Man Remastered the day that went live, which was like Thanksgiving, I think. And I didn't touch it until like 2 days ago. And it had to update like all the games. All the games had updates since the last time I turned it on. And I played some stuff on it. But like, most pleasant surprise. Like, I gotta say, the PlayStation 5 is kind of exactly what I was expecting it to be, and not a bad way.
Yeah, it's living up to my expectations. Yeah. Hardly ever happens to me anymore with anything. I have to.
No.
I am a skeptic, and so it's very rare.
I guess I'm pleasantly surprised by how fast it downloads stuff, because I had a lot of problems with the PS4, sort of like getting stuck on slow download speeds.
It's better at launch than it is now, though, but it is faster than PS4 still.
Yeah, it's definitely an improvement, and it also it stays fast when you're playing other games, which was not true on the PS4 and still isn't true on the Series X. If you have a game open on the Series X, it halves the download speed on my system. And I have to quit everything to get this download speed back up to like 120, 150. It doesn't, especially when you're
online. If you're playing a multiplayer mode, I can see.
No, I'm playing. I mean, I guess Assassin's Creed does have like Ubisoft Connect stuff in it, but it's anything. I actually tested it with KOTOR, and it actually does the same thing. So, and I know KOTOR is not doing anything online. So I think download speeds are nice on this. I was not a make or break thing by any means, but it was nice to notice that I can do anything I want while I'm waiting for this to download, and it's not going to kill my download speed. I'm still going to get that game downloaded in a reasonable amount of time. So that's a nice surprise.
Yep. All right, that's it for GameFace episode 239. Thanks to everybody who took a minute to ask us a question on Twitter or on the site. We think we'll be back live next Wednesday. Jared seemed to think he's going to be able to do it. The show may get moved to like Tuesday or Thursday, but that's why I keep telling you guys, follow us on Twitter at Sifted Games. I got some messages on YouTube today. They're like, hey, what happened to the live stream? If you followed us on Twitter at Sifted Games, you get all those alerts and you know what's going on. I'm sorry if any of you guys just went straight to Twitch today waiting for the show to start. I probably should have jumped in there and said something, but I was trying to prep for the show, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, follow us on Twitter at Sifted Games. You'll know exactly what's going on with everything we're doing. And while you're at it, you can follow me on Twitter at Dinfire, and you can find Matt on Twitter at MKyle. That's MKEIL. As I've mentioned over the last couple of weeks, our new shirts are live in the store. Sales are going very well. I did not get many of them, and they are running out fast. And I'm not trying to tell you guys to like get you to buy them or whatever. I made sure I wasn't going to be stuck with shirts this time because I did not get any made. So I'm not worried about that.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you, like,
His wife's coming back someday, and she don't want to see a lot of shirts.
she's actually coming back in like an hour. I leave from this recording to pick her up from the airport. So anyway, thank you guys for all your support. As you guys know, we are supported 100% by Patreon. If you're listening to this show anywhere on the internet and you want to support us, go to patreon.com/sifted. That's /SIFTD without the E. And as always, Matt and Jared hopefully will be back next week. We'll try to.
I will be.
What'd you say?
I'll be back next week.
I hope so. We do only have 2 more episodes left after this one for the year. We have next week, which is Cyberpunk episode, which I am very, very excited for.
Well, except not, because I'm not going to be playing it by then.
What do you mean?
Comes out on the 10th.
Oh. We'll see. And then we have our Game of the Year episode after that. So we're winding things down here real quick. We may have to stay a little bit nimble with Jared's schedule to try to get live streams. No matter what, we will make sure we do our Game of the Year episode live for you guys. I promise you that. Come hell or high water. We have to do it on a Saturday, but we'll make sure that we do our Game of the Year episode live for you guys. So on behalf of Matt, again, thanks for all your support, both on Patreon and with Twitch Prime. We couldn't do without you guys. GameFace is up and out.